Would you believe me if I told you an old story? One where the beginning is more than 100 years old. One that's featured every big name to exist in auto racing. Would you believe me if I said nothing grows old here? Where thousands and thousands come to be awed and inspired by speed. One where dreams are born, then just as quickly destroyed. Would you believe me if I said it was more than just a race? One that requires so much sacrifice for just a chance at glory. One where their faces are etched into history to never be forgotten. Would you believe me if I said this version of the story was different? A version where the cars are virtual, but the racing and competition are real. A story that brings grown men and women to tears, then just a page later to a smile from ear to ear. A story so fast it's tough to keep up with. One with danger and thrill around each and every corner. A story about heartbreak. And a story about perseverance. It's a story about redemption. And a story about triumph.
Well, this is the closest thing, boys, to living a dream. Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is.
And now, the work continues. It's the week of. And now it's the question of who builds amongst their stories and who prepares the best for some of the biggest events in all of iRacing this week. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Elbows Up TV's coverage of Redline Race Design's Practice Day. It's the fourth day of practices and the first after what was an eventful qualifying weekend for both the Crescent Donut 100 and the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside of the booth tonight is Billy Rowley. We'll also have Zane Scott with us and be joined throughout the evening as well by Baden Stewart. Today is expected to be a very competitive session. It's also expected to be a very important session, Zane, because the drivers know where they're going to be in terms of series, in terms of events. But it's also about some of the preparation for said events that now comes into play, especially with everything coming up this week.
Absolutely, the guys are no longer just looking for true speed. They're looking for the speed mixed with more handling now, more than ever. These guys need to get cars that are going to handle well in the draft. They're going to need to get a car that's got the speed when they're not behind someone. It's going to be tough to win the race if you get out front. You just have so much downforce in the car that you're 5-10 miles an hour slower than everybody else. So we've heard some rumors come around already here, the Fake 500 field and down Gasoline Alley, about drivers staying up late into the wee morning hours to get their cars built. Someone quoting to us, they looked dangerous on the racetrack, but they were so fast. Others going the more stable route, want to be slower, but they want to have a car that they can keep underneath them for all 500 miles or 200 laps. And not only that, but then you've got the Patriot 100 drivers. They have a 40-lap sprint on their hands Thursday night. Will they look to maybe just get more speed than handling or more handling than speed? It's all going to really come to fruition here in this first practice of the week. And there's only 2 practices left. They have today and tomorrow officially to get these cars dialed in before we go racing Thursday night.
It's going to be important to make sure that preparation comes into play today throughout these next few sessions. Keep in mind as well that it was fairly hot throughout the practice sessions for those who tuned in throughout the first week in action prior to qualifying weekend. Today, it's much more cooler. 65 degrees Fahrenheit is the air temp, 98 is the track temp, 9 miles an hour of winds to the west, currently to the south rather, currently gusting with the headwind down the front stretch, meaning drivers are getting that push from behind down the back straightaway. Very high humidity as well at 87%. And that could change how some of these teams approach this weekend's events, knowing the weather much more different and much more cooler compared to last week.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, we saw that in qualifying this weekend. We'll dive into that earlier throughout as well, but yeah, it was definitely threw him for a loop this weekend with the way that the weather handled. A lot cooler temperatures than what we saw in practice. These guys were practicing in the 115 to 120 degree mark. We were seeing qualifying runs from the mid 80s to upper 90s. So weather definitely playing a factor this week.
Now let's talk about some of those qualifying performances and some of those storylines for those who missed throughout the weekend. Brian Blackford set the pole time for the week with a 190.786 5/1000ths of a miles an hour over Tyler Street. Billy Breckley, Joshua Chin, James Tiernan rounded out the top 5. The first driver out, though, that has to go to the Crescent Donut Patriot 100, Bobby Rafferty, a 190.6195. That difference, a few tenths of a miles an hour out from Mark Broderick's time. And Landon Castle, on top of things, having to start from the back row after bump day. So there was a lot of pressure and some great speeds, but others who were expected to be some of the favorites who either squeaked in or will have to try and hope for some luck in the Patriot 100 here, Zane.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year's pole day and bump day I thought were, high notes of this entire event. We saw guys make some last minute runs, get in the show. This year, we surpassed that. Somehow we did even better. I mean, pole day, bump day, absolutely insane. Let's start off let's look at pole day here. Tyler Street's the first car out. He quickly went to the top of the charts there with the speed that, he had, and he sat there for more than half of the ordered qualifying. The way this works is everyone gets a random draw in an order. They get at least one qualifying attempt in that order, and then after that, it's a free-for-all. These guys are allowed 3 attempts per day in the qualifying. And Tyler Street there, luckily, he survived the first half of that ordered portion of the qualifying, and then finally Brian Blackford went out there, which we were expecting maybe Joshua Chin to go out there early and go quick, but he laid down a lap of 190.636 miles per hour, 4-lap average. And then we saw James Tiernan, another favorite. He was fast all week last week in practice. He went 190.616 miles an hour, put him on the inside, or not the inside, the middle of, that second row. But then it was Brian Blackford. We got to the second half. It was loaded. It was Landon Castle, Brian Blackford, some of those guys. Blackford went quick, 190.786 miles per hour, his 4-lap average. His fastest lap, 47.103. It was the fastest lap set on pole day. And then, Landon Castle, we expected him to be fast. Him and Blackford kind of run hand in hand with this event, working on setups, working on lines, and etc. And Landon Castle went out there and wrecked on his first attempt. He went out again a little bit later, wrecked on his second attempt. And then his third attempt, he had to make a massive lift. He was in, I believe, the fake 500 there, just barely after pole day. And then the end pole day, we saw some moves that we questioned. Justin Carey, he was 7th. He was going to be locked in on pole day, went out to make a qualifying run. He went slower. He fell all the way to 17th, just 2 spots to the good on pole day. We saw Mike Rasmus make a late race run. He bumped himself into the top 18 at 6 at 190.57 miles per hour, and that moved Carey to 18th. Carey then was bumped by Daniel Zegers, who went 8th fastest on pole day. So Justin Carey, went 7th to 17th, and then 17th to 19th, and he was, at that point, the top 18 locked. He had a chance to get bumped out. Tyson Landis, who was also in the top 18, wanted the pole position. He went for it. He went even slower, and he fell all the way outside the top 18 on his second attempt, which bumped Justin Carey back into 18th and locked into the fake 500 for this year's event. And then we rolled in the pole day, and bump day. Bump day just had so much drama involved with the event. I'm struggling. You struggle for words to describe it. Seth the Merchant got in late, bought the seat to get in. He went out there on his first attempt, the last car out in order qualifying, spun going into turn 1 on his first lap, ended the run, came back out a little bit later, He went the fastest out of anyone on bump day at 191.092 miles per hour. He will be the fastest car on the grid for the Fake 500 by virtue of that speed, which I'll remind you the temperatures on bump day were slightly cooler than they were on pole day, which allowed for that lap time. But then Landon Castle, his first run, he went out, wasn't there. He didn't have the speed. I think he hit the wall, if I remember correctly, right, Billy?
Yeah, he, like a lot of guys, the wind caught him out, stuck him in the fence, so he used up his, one of his attempts real early in a way that he didn't want to use.
Yeah, roosed it up and then went back out for a second attempt, and he had a major lift on the south end of the racetrack, and we thought that was it. We wrote him off. He went 47.57 seconds, which is 189.19 miles per hour on that first lap. We wrote him off. We thought he was done. He was going to have to make a third attempt to make the field, and then he shocked us. He went 191.005 on the second lap, 191.24 miles per hour in his third, and then he ended it with 191.212 miles per hour in his fourth and final lap for a four-lap average of 190.665 miles per hour, which bumped him into the Fake 500 starting field. But that wasn't where it ended. He had to withstand several drivers who were on the outside looking in that had the speed that we thought could get their way into the field. Bobby Rafferty, Tyler Grafton, Aaron Rouse, Christopher Tate, Braden McMahon, Adam Plunkett, and more all made their shots at getting in. Mark Broderick, he was 33rd. He was the guy on the bubble. If someone went faster, he was out. He was not in qualifying. He wasn't on pit road. He wasn't going to be able to make another attempt. And then the Bobby Rafferty run happened. And my, oh my, I think that is the storyline for the 2021 Fake 500.
My heart still sunk.
Yeah, it still hurts for him. He went out 47. I mean, let's put it this way. Mark Broderick's first lap, a 47.3 flat, 190.278 mile or 24 miles per hour. Bobby Rafferty's first lap, a 47.317, 190.206 miles per hour. He was on pace. He was right there with him. Second lap, he went faster than Mark Broderick by 0.4 thousandths of a mile per hour. He was there, still knocking, getting faster. On his third lap, he went even faster. This time, he went more than 0.2 of a mile an hour faster than Mark Broderick. He was on pace at that moment to bump Mark Broderick out of the field. He was just thousandths of a second away or off of Broderick. And then on the final lap, coming out of turn 4 and to the finish line, he had record-setting pace coming to the start-finish line, the yard of bricks. We thought he was going to do it. He was going to go the speed required to bump Broderick out of the field. And then just 50 yards before the start-finish line, a sputter of the engine as he ran out of fuel slowed him down enough to go 47.167 seconds, 190.811 miles per hour for a four-lap average of 190.615 miles per hour. And when we calculated the score sheet, he was just 0.3 of a mile per hour away from being in the starting field for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. And all that stood between him and that was just 50 yards and a drop of fuel.
And it just shows where that preparation is such a vital need to make sure everything is all set to go.
Late breaking news real quick. Justin Carey is now out of the Fake 500. Ryan Broderick is in.
Oh, wow.
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 So the seat buying has begun for the Fake 500. Ryan Broderick will start shotgun on the field for the Fake 500. Justin Carey is out.
And Justin Carey had been qualified originally on the outside of row 6 with a 190.273. And for those wondering what that means, that is a dynamic when it comes to this event where drivers have that option to be able to buy their way into a seat, like that can happen in the real world Indianapolis 500-mile race. And that's come into play now. We mentioned with Seth the Merchant. It now comes into play for a starting position. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out now here. Zane, your thoughts on that news?
Oh, I mean, that's going to put, I believe, Ryan Broderick in for his first Fake 500 start in 2 attempts. Justin Carey will not start the Fake 500. And everyone's going to move up one spot from 18th on back. So that's going to put Seth the Merchant now on the outside of the 6th row. That's going to move everyone that was in the middle to the inside, everyone on the outside to the middle. And that'll put Ryan Broderick and Mark Broderick starting right next to each other on the last row of the Fake 500. So, Cole, you'll have Landon Castle and then 2 brothers in the last row club coming to take the green on Saturday.
And that's going to be interesting how this plays out and who else tries to move their way in here, Billy, as a result.
Well, and just got confirmation, too, from Jeremy Zarfos, another starter in the field. Last year, Ryan was in, Mark was not. So it's going to be got the brother dynamic sitting on the back row. See if the brothers can get going to the front. Mark's shown a lot of speed. Mark has really good racecraft, too. So does Ryan. They both run really well. Mark running a lot of sprint car races and midget races. But when he's on the pavement, he's still a really good shoes. Hank Silver gets real wide off of turn number 2. But watching Doyle Lawrence right now work with Braden McMahon, kind of playing a little bit of leapfrog, getting used to the car, and that's the key to the practice session today is getting used to this car in traffic. Last week you were trying not to be in traffic because you wanted to see what you had speed-wise by yourself, but now it's time to go run in traffic and get used to that because, again, unlike last year, no quick repairs. You got one shot at this. You crash, you're done. You're out of the Fake 500. So racecraft's going to be very, very important for all these guys.
And we've seen some of that come into play at some of the end of some of the practice sessions last week. Right from the get-go, that point today, with speeds right now seeing Seth the Merchant at the top of the board with a 46.675 rather, with Brian Blackford, Adam Blocker, Daniel Zagertz, Tyson Landis, the current top 5. And of note with some of these groupings, some of them are relative friends with some big headlines coming in. Other ones, we've seen some great speed throughout the week, and especially some of the race trim. It's going to be interesting how some of these groupings, especially this grouping we look at with drivers like Blackford, like Seth the Merchant, like Adam Blocker, like Zagertz, all comes into play here. And keep in mind, some news coming in today from Horizon Racing Team. Seth the Merchant and Michael Cozy Jr. will both be running once again in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series this year. The Merchant, Pro Series contender this winter rather. Michael Cozy Jr., his first major attempt with a big organization, Zane.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that more speaks on just the caliber of drivers that we have in this field and in this program across a wide range of disciplines. You know, you have Seth the Merchant, who's right there knocking on the door to get into the Coke Pro Series on the asphalt side. You have Michael Cozy Jr. He's going to try to make his name known and get in that series. And they're joining a list of drivers in this field that have experience across all the disciplines. I mean, you have Brian Blackford, a former, Peak Antifreeze Series pro. You have James Tiernan. He's a former USAC Dirt pro. You have Skylar Brown, a former World of Outlaws pro. You have Landon Castle, a real-world NASCAR driver with tons of experience. I mean, we're just all over the place on this. You have Mike Razimus, who I think specializes in road courses and runs the Slower 79 on those road courses quite often. I mean, just talent from across the field, across the discipline, across all aspects of iRacing coming together for one event. I mean, I just don't think you can script anything out that's supposed to be more indie than that.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, we talked about this coming in, where originally before the starting of the shuffling, in 17 veterans entering tonight's coverage, 16 rookies made their way into the Fake 500. That includes 6 drivers also on top of things on their first start in their second attempt to make the show. And how big is that knowledge going to come into play with the second race, you feel, Billy, now that drivers now have that comfortability in this type of event?
Oh, I think it's massive. I think that's one of the dynamics that's going to get very it's going to be awesome on this kind of a field. We see it in the real life Indianapolis 500 as well as other disciplines too. The more experience you have of knowing what to expect, making the run down into turn 1, something that not a lot of these guys have done before. They're 3 wide start. We just like the big 500. This is 3 wide start. And having that experience last year of doing that for the first time, getting down into turn number 1 is extremely crucial. So, is it going to be possible that we see rookies running really well together? Absolutely. But that late race experience of running the race the first time, it's going to make a massive, massive difference mentally as well as actual and race pace, of knowing when to push, when to go. Earlier we were on board with Dan Zagers, and you could hear him lifting off the corners, or lifting down the straightaways to make sure that you're not only in the draft in the right spots, but making sure that you're setting up your passes properly. That's all crucial keys. As Tyler Kendall goes for a little bit of a spin there. And actually out on racetrack, Zane, we didn't see him over the weekend. He had some hardware issues. But the Pink Zebra might be back, as he is out on the race course right now.
Yes, he is. Chris Peterson out there turning laps here. He will start shotgun on the field for the Patriot 100. And I was talking to Chris a little bit. Disappointing year for him. He really wanted to make this race. Couple hardware issues kept him out. He had a great draw for pole day. We know that he's got the speed, to make this race. Just computer issues, or the equivalent of mechanical issues, I guess, in the real world, kept him from turning a qualifying lap. So he's going to get an opportunity. He'll start shotgun on the Crescent Donut Patriot 100. A good finish there. He could become an alternate for this Fake 500. The tough spot for him is he's ineligible to buy a seat in the Fake 500. So he's got to get in via the alternate route. So be interested to see how that plays out. Good to see him back on track here, getting these laps, getting ready for Thursday night.
By the way, also confirmation coming in, Tyler Street, currently at work this week, will be here, though, for the main event. So going to be ready for some of the practice time, potentially, here, Billy. And how big is it to miss time during the week, with 6 hours of practice available over the next 2 days in preparation for the main events coming up? Bang, bang, bang.
I think that's absolutely massive, especially for... he did attempt to qualify last year, so he is considered a veteran, but he's kind of got that rookie status of in the race. And especially with starting middle of the front row, that drive down into turn number 1 is pretty daunting. We heard Landon Castle and a few others last year state that was one of the more tricky things that they've done on the sim, of getting down into turn number 1, that give and that take, because you can run down there 2 wide, but you really can't do it 3 wide. So a lot of give and take at the start of the race. Tyler's a good, strong competitor, and got a good head on his shoulders. So I don't see any issues there. But definitely that this experience that you're getting right now in the draft on a long fuel run, understanding what your car is going to be doing once the fuel loads get lower. Last year we saw guys. Brian Blackford was talking in an interview over qualifying weekend that he was fully planning on running full tanks as much as humanly possible on race day. With the way that the fueling levels work, you're only going to be able to get to run, right around 45 to 50 laps, depending on how the draft works and yellows and things of that nature. So we can see up to 4 to 5 pit stops potentially. Guys, running towards the back, saving fuel. It's going to be a very and these practice sessions are so very important for that, to figure out exactly what your car needs, what it's going to take in order to make it to the end.
And we mentioned Bobby Rafferty and the qualifying earlier on in today's coverage. He's one of the drivers who's just made his way towards the racetrack. Bobby Rafferty is now on the radio as Bobby Rafferty. Do you have a copy?
Yes, I do. How's it going, bud? Long time no talk.
Long time no talk. It's been a busy past couple days for you. First things first, how are you feeling about heading into tonight as the pole sitter for the Crescent Donut Patriot 100 after what was an emotional qualifying session?
Feeling all right. Just want to get the car. I'm in a weird position again, just like I was going into bump day, trying to figure out if I was going to pull my time or not. or stand on it and it came and bit me. Being on the pole for the 100, I'm in the position where, okay, do I leave the car trimmed out or do I want this thing to be stable in traffic? But pretty much just want to try to get the car up to pace on fuel. Myself, Keith, and Dave, this is our first foray into these cars. And it's been an awesome experience, awesome event. Would I have loved to have been in the 500? Absolutely, but I had to cut the fuel as close as I did to have a shot. I got bit by the weather, and that's just the way it goes.
That's what happens in real life too, Weather can be a major difference, and keep in mind, you can't control the weather in real life. But as well, how would you describe the learning experience in preparing these types of cars?
I personally absolutely love Indy. I love the cars. Indy, to me, is a very special place for me and my family. Indy is a place that, the 500 especially is something that before my father passed away, from the time I was a kid to the time I was 24 years old, Memorial Day weekend, me and my dad, we sat down, we watched the race, as well as one of my first ever national events in quarter midgets was right in the center of the track for the JSCA Nationals. So I had the pleasure of racing at this facility also in real life. So this place holds a special place in my heart. I will absolutely run this every year as long as these guys will put it on.
You mentioned the experience racing here in real life. Describe that feeling for the fans who may have not visited the Brickyard in the past.
There is something that when you drive through the gates at this place, there is something that comes over you that is you can't describe it. Especially growing up for me as a kart fan. I'm going to age myself here bringing up kart, but being a kart fan, watching, I can specifically remember the Alonso Jr. Scott Goodyear finish here. I believe it was in '89. If you're an Indy fan and have watched it on TV for as long as I did, and then to come here, this is your heaven, basically. From the museum and all the history there and all the cars that are there, just being here, there's nothing like it. And this is somebody that's also been to Daytona as well. There is nothing like the Brickyard. This, hands down, is the best racetrack in the country, and I dare say the world.
Of course, you're with Jim Beaver Esports, and you mentioned learning some of the experiences with this car, and on top of things, the whole organization's growth this year. How would you describe the emotions from the organization for this type of event in preparation overall for Jim Beaver Esports, since there were several of your teammates as well trying to get them their way into this event?
This was something that actually Keith Jeffrey had suggested that we had run. We've got our World Cup event coming up here. It's actually 2 days before the iRacing Daytona race. So we were full bore on our off-road truck event that's going to be massive, and we figured, okay, this will be a fun event that we can go and run. And as we got involved in it, it got more serious and more serious, and it's something that we've all been working extremely hard on. Especially, I've got to give a shout out to Keith. Keith has, excuse my French, but busted his ass in plain English on making these sets and learning the cars and helping bring us along. And we've all absolutely loved it. We've had the support 100% from Chris Leone and Jim Beaver himself, and pretty much everybody from the team, even guys like Connor Parisi and Jesse Isidore. They've come on and helped us test. So it went from something of, hey, let's see if we can go make it and do something fun, to, okay, let's figure out how to win this thing, because we're really enjoying it.
Been a big amount of preparation for this type of race. How critical is all this practice available for this type of event? This is the 4th day of practice, one more day after this as well today. It's
going to be absolutely huge. I mean, especially like I said, with us, this being our first foray into these cars on bump day, actually, in between my second run and my last run, where we ran out of fuel 50 yards short, I spent a good hour and a half desperately just trying, not even to try to find tenths, I was trying to find thousands. So practice is going to be huge, but especially for the race, when you have this many cars on track, you can't simulate that in a practice by yourself. You have to have a lot of guys around you to be able to feel what the car is going to do in the draft. And, especially for Keith and Dave, they're going to be starting mid-pack. It's going to be very, very crucial for them. I'm a little bit more fortunate with starting on the pole. Hoping I can take off and run away and hide in this thing. But especially for those guys, having this many cars on track is going to be super, super critical.
Of course, want to ask you this as well, since you are also the dirt oval manager for Jim Beaver Esports. One, do you plan to run in the night before the fake 500? And two, if you are, what's kind of the approach to that?
The fake 500, I actually was not able to.
The night before, the dirt race.
Yeah, the dirt race. Unfortunately, I was not able to run. I kind of had to pick and choose with all the events that we've got coming up right now. I actually, Justin, let me put it to you this way: I actually, unfortunately, had to take the season off from BRL this year. Also, that's how busy we are, and you know how invested I am into that league. It would have been cool to go for 3 in a row for the championships and the street stocks there, but it got to be too much. I'm working a lot of hours right now. I still have my family, and like I said, we have a lot of different events coming up team-wise that are very important. So I kind of had to cherry pick, and the guys kind of had to cherry pick on what we were going to do and prioritize that way. But I do, when it comes to that race, I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. And it's, it's something cool because what these guys are doing, they're simulating basically what we do, in real life. You have the midget race, you've got the Patriot, you've got the 500. These, how do I put this? I forget who it was. I think it was Zane posted on Twitter. Hey, iRacing, how do we make this, an iRacing event where it's going to get more spotlight? It deserves it. This has got to be one of the most well put together, well thought out, well run, quote unquote league events or special events that's not iRacing affiliated that I've ever been a part of. So hats off to all these guys and all the hard work they put into putting this deal on.
Absolutely, a ton of work has been put into this, and it's been incredible to see everything throughout the week so far for this one. Now, Billy, want to ask you or bring you in for this. Anything you'd like to add for Bobby? Because obviously a lot of great and special words said there from Bobby Rafferty and the Rafferty family.
Well, just a massive thank you to Bobby and everybody over at Jim Beaver Esports for coming over and running this event. This is like you said, this Indy is near and dear to me and Zane and Baden's heart as well, and we felt like the sim community really deserved a true spot that felt like the greatest spectacle in sim racing, and glad that you guys are here. I literally, when you ran out of fuel coming to the checkered, my heart absolutely sank. That was one of the most brutal things that can happen, and just heart goes out to you. But good luck in the Patriot and the rest of the week. Win that sucker, and you never know. Weirder things have happened, and the pole sitter from before, or the winner last year, ended up third in the fake 500. So it's not totally out of the woods yet for you.
Absolutely. And, look, there's Justin can tell you I am one of the most brutally honest people you will ever meet in your life. I don't give out praise very easily unless it's well-deserved. And, what I said, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. So thank you guys for doing this and all the hard work. As for that running out 50 yards, you know what? 20 years behind the wheel in real life, that's racing. And you know what is, like I said said in the chat afterwards, am I allowed to cry? You know what? Yeah, I was like that for maybe about an hour and a half. Does it still hurt? Yeah, but you know what? I'm taking that and turning it into, motivation and drive to win the 100 and hopefully make the 500 this year. I won't buy a seat, nothing against guys that will, but to me, this place, if you're going to make the field, you earn it, period. That's my outlook on it. But it's definitely going to give me the drive and motivation to come back next year and lock her in on the first day. That's the goal, that's the plan, but you will see me back, and I'll guarantee you will see multiple JBE cars back for next year's event, without a doubt, and probably more of us, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, we really do appreciate that. We just want to keep this event growing and growing each and every year, and it's been fantastic to see everything going on this year so far with all this. It's been a roller coaster so far, and it's, I said this to Tyler Schell last night. He was chasing down Alex Bergeron in the World of Outlaw Pro Series race and got into the fence and sent her out of the ballpark. And I told him, I told him then, I said, Bud, a wise man once told me years ago, you got to lose one hard in order to win one later. And I think you just pulled your rookie stripe off that. Off in qualifying, so next year I'm sure is going to be a lot better for you guys, especially with your second year coming. But just massive thank you to you and everybody over there at Jim Beaver for supporting this event and taking it, as serious as what a lot of other people have. And we wouldn't be able to do this without the guys that are coming and entering this race. So hopefully it keeps growing year after year, and it's fun to do. It's a lot of work, but it's a blast. Every year it's the same thing. By the end of the race, we're like, man, when's the next one? So just thanks again to everybody, and good luck in the Patriot.
Nah, thank you very, very much, Bud. I really do appreciate it. And if you guys just don't mind, I just want to, thank all of my guys over at Jim Beaver Esports and the guys that help us put it together. First and foremost, Fistful of Bourbon, Jim Beaver himself, Jim Beaver Esports, Chris Leone, the Motorsports Drop, Sant's Racing Fabrications, Bobby Sant, one of my best friends in the world. Super proud of him. He is doing the sim rigs as his business full time now. So I want to wish him the best of luck, but I am so proud of him for taking a leap of faith with that. I've had a lot of compliments on our paint from guys entered in the race and through the broadcast and stuff. Big shout out to Matt Everhart. He's our marketing manager as well as our painter. He runs 07 Designs. Super big thank you to him. Like I said, my teammates, there's quite a bit of them. They know who they are. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody that helps us put this together, and the biggest shout out of them all, no offense to our sponsors, but I got to thank my wife Alicia for putting up with a very, very long Saturday and Sunday with me sitting at the computer, I think for close to 12 hours trying to make this show. She puts up with a lot, and, just thank you to her.
We had a lot of guys echo that statement, where it was like, you know what? Wife or girlfriend, I just got to go run 4 laps. It'll take 5-10 minutes, and then they were here all day. So,
yeah, she knows better than that from being in real racing. Real racing is hurry up and wait.
that is the name of the game. Hurry up and wait. So, yeah, good luck the rest of the week, man. We really do appreciate it, and already looking forward to next year.
Thank you, guys, and hopefully I'll be talking to you in the winner's circle on Thursday, and I'll definitely be back for practice tomorrow. Thank you guys again, and have a good night.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
That was Bobby Rafferty from Jim Beaver Esports. He is set to start on the pole for the Patriot 100 this campaign. And some big emotion there, Zane, on top of things from what we just heard from Bobby Rafferty, and you can tell the emotion in qualifying for the event, and also, of course, the experience of racing here all coming together.
Yeah, I mean, that's Indy. It's just, there's a lot of people that try to muster words for this event that can't. One of the youngsters said it best in Victory Land, I believe it was Al Jr. He said, "You just don't know what Indy means." And we got a big wreck in turns 1 and 2. Someone there spun out in front of the field and nowhere to go for the rest of them. But you just don't know what Indy means until you race there, until you win there. And this may be a sim, and this isn't real life, and there's no danger of going 200 miles an hour around the turn. But I mean, there's no other iRacing event, staged in Indianapolis that has what this event has. Full 2 weeks of practice, a pull day, bump day, a Patriot 100 the night before, and the fake. I mean, this is the speaking, humbly here about this, as me and Billy put this all on, but there's no other event like it. Where this is a one of a kind. It's the most accurate, most realistic event. Open Wheels did something like this. I believe it was 2 years ago, not last fall, but the fall before, and did a great job about it with their event. But this event it's a homage or however you want to say that word, depending on where you're from in the country, to the Indy past, to what a lot of people would say were, some of the best years in Indy when they filled the grandstands on qualifying day. You just don't see that now. You'll be lucky if you see fans on any of the turns for qual and pull day and bump day today. But back in the day, they filled this place, and this is what this event's about. It's a tribute to that, and these guys are running a 1979 Formula One IndyCar hybrid that we've turned it into. In an event that's going to go 500 miles. They're going to start 3 rows 11, 3 wide, and all this stuff. So for Bobby, to say all that and have to go through what he goes through, I think it says a lot about this event and what it means to some of these guys. A lot of them, another one that had said great words and said, "I never compliment or say anything about anything." He said the same thing Bobby said. This is a one of a kind event. You guys do a great job. Even if I didn't make the race, and this is coming from a person that didn't make the race either. I'll definitely be back next year. I want to make it. So, I mean, these guys are going to come back. Definitely Bobby. He's going to come back next year. He's going to be hungry. He's going to be looking for something. And in our leadoff video there, it ends on, this is a story about redemption and a story about triumph. This is a story about heartbreak. Bobby's going to go through heartbreak this year, but he's going to come back next year. He's going to look to be a story of redemption and a story of triumph. So be interesting to see what happens. And then for some of these guys, they triumph through qualifying. They're going to get their heart broken on race day. It's just the way it goes. Some of these guys are going to put in, 400, 500 plus laps, maybe 1,000 laps here, and they make a mistake on maybe that first lap, and their race is over. So what we saw out of Bobby there and the emotions felt bump day and still today is just the beginning. It doesn't even scratch the surface of what we're going to see later in this week.
100% on that one. As we look at one of the main draft groups right now, in this group is Ryan Broderick, Skylar Brown, Seth DeMerchant, Adam Blonker, and Brian Blackford at the moment. And these groups have been a constant throughout this entire practice as they crash into turn 3. Upside down goes several cars. Adam Blonker in the power slide car flying up into the sky. And it's the hope that you prepare yourself for those types of incidents too, as we take a look at what just happened here. 3 wide into turn 3.
Yeah, Ryan Broderick just gets arrow tight there. He's going to push up the track where DeMerchant was at. He's going to bump the left rear, and then DeMerchant's going to go around. They're going to go right in front of the pack, and just nowhere for some of those guys to go. It just happened so quick at 190 plus miles an hour.
And you have to be prepared for those types of incidents, because imagine that with all 33 cars. It's going to be that level of intensity at the starts, especially for this type of event. That's why the pit parties have been a constant throughout this entire practice session so far, sponsored by Redline Race Designs. In fact, this group is going to feature even more cars after that.
Yeah, I mean, you spend the first practice week finding speed. That's what you want, because you're theoretically practicing for qual. You're getting a qual line down. You're building a set that's got max speed. Now qualifying's over. You can't go back and redo your laps. You don't get 6 attempts tomorrow to make the race again. What you got is what you got. If you're starting the fake, you're starting the fake. If you're starting the Patriot, you're starting the Patriot. But now you're in race mode. Now you got to find the setup that you can handle in traffic, underneath, above, behind, and in front of other cars. Do you have a setup that's got enough straight line speed to where you can drag race people down the straightaways? And then do you have a setup that's got the handling to where you can drive through the turn side by side with them, without spinning out or pushing aero tight? Those are all the things that these guys have to work on this week. They have six hours basically to do it officially. They're allowed to throw up their private servers, and we do see that. But this is the only chance they're going to get to race around other drivers that they're going to race with, and we're definitely going to see that here. And then, do you have a car that can get in the draft when you're a second behind and pole? We saw last year that the first 20-some laps went green, and these guys had spaced out. We're going to start right on top of each other, but as soon as these guys can get comfortable, the field's going to start spacing out, people with different strategies. So, we see that kind of with this group. We have a group of 3 out front, another group of 2, a bigger gap to a group of 3, and then another group of 3 further behind. We're going to see that a lot, I think, on race day. And then with this year's change on how cautions are going to be thrown, I think we're going to see more green flag stints, and we're going to see a lot more of this for 500 miles.
As we look at some of these groups, keep in mind that there is a lot of experience here, Billy. We talked about during the opening week that it's coming to play towards the top of the board. Take Mike Rasmus, one of the drivers from the Lionheart Racing Series that competes on the retro side. He's currently up in 3rd. One of the drivers that went under the radar for the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series in 2020. Almost snuck his way into the top 20. One of the last drivers out before that cut line. He's looking pretty quick in the Nexus Esports backed machine so far. Also, don't forget about drivers like, as talked about, Adam Blocker, the champion in the IR18's IndyCar Series as well, is currently amongst the top 10 cars. You also have Tyson Landis, who's also in that grouping. Some fast drivers from some of the fast series and top series and all of open wheel racing competing in this.
Yeah, and that's what Zane was talking about it earlier of, you see the big sprint car races, you see the big NASCAR races, you see, midget races and late models and all these sorts of different disciplines that guys really don't step out of their comfort zone very much. But for this event, we're seeing, NASCAR pros, real life NASCAR drivers, NASCAR spotters, IndyCar spotters, it's a who's who really of sim racing. And the more that this event grows, the bigger it's going to get with more and more cars, the harder it's going to be to make the field. And that's what we want. That's what Indy's all about in real life. It's to show the best of the best and who's the most brave, and that's really what we're getting to see. A lot of these guys are getting into this car for the first time. Seth DeMerchant made the comment, or Brian Blackford said that he'd turned maybe 100 laps before he got to go qualify. So a lot of inexperience out there, but a lot of experience on the sim, but not necessarily a lot of experience within this car. So it's going to be very interesting, come race day, to really see what we've got, on race day, and who's going to use a lot of give and take. In practice, we're not going to see a lot of give and take. You're pushing the limits of the car to try to figure out what you need to do. But on race day, knowing that you don't have that fast repair in your pocket, you're really going to have to be careful and tiptoe that line to make sure that you don't crash yourself out early and take a lot of good fast race cars with you as well.
Absolutely. Part of the reason we want to put the spotlight towards Blocker's direction is we mentioned the championships and Lionheart, of course, also a former Retro Series champion, had at one time been the runner-up in 2019 for the Indy 500, the iRacing official Indy 500 for the broadcast side, a former champion of it for Top Split on the Friday night race, the non-broadcasted one that year. He's someone that can perform at the highest levels, and I'm curious how he does in this type of event in this type of a car, especially since he can be fairly stout with the right group, especially since Powerslide is one of the top organizations on the sim this year in open wheel racing, as we follow along with the main pack still with Mike Rasmus, Chris Springer, Tyson Landis, Daniel Zager, Skylar Brown amongst it, Billy.
Yeah, well, and that's, Bobby Rafferty talked about it earlier. Jim Beaver Esports right now has 3 guys that made the attempt this year into the Fake 500. But that's not including all the guys that were helping them test and doing all this work. We see that a lot on the dirt side with the Elbows Up SimSort suit team. It's the same deal for this. Even if you're not in the Pro Series, a lot of the guys that aren't in the Pro Series still work together on making setups faster and getting drivers ready to go and all that sort of thing. So it's a bigger team effort. And once, in a case like Adam Blocker, I'm sure that with the team that he's with, they're doing more work than what we're seeing on the broadcast or qualifying days, that sort of thing. They're really working together and making these cars fast. And this car, with it being as sensitive as it is, it really does take a lot of work, especially if you're on the side like a Jim Beaver Esports organization that's never really used this car before or ran this car much. So they're learning on the fly, which makes what even they've done so far this year even more impressive.
Keep in mind that the preparation levels, too, could be different for drivers in the Patriot 100 compared to the Fake 500, because the Fake 500, of course, 500 miles, 200 laps. The Patriot 100 is essentially 40 laps, Billy. If you were a driver in this field, what are some of those differences you and your team would approach for a race like the Patriot 100 compared to the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 this year?
Well, I think one of the neat things is it really the Jim Beaver guys. They we keep going back to them, but they're a perfect example. They have two guys in the Fake 500 that aren't really going to get real world racing experience with this car on this racetrack with a pack in that environment, and Bobby's going to be basically their guinea pig. So Bobby's going to have the first crack at it to really see what happens as far as race day goes. They'll be able to look at some of the data if they're using any sort of telemetry at all. They're going to be able to look at that data and basically, okay, this is what we did. This is how much fuel we were using. They're going to be able to see that unfold in front of them. And so what Bobby's going to learn in that race is going to help them within the Fake 500. So that real race experience makes a big, big difference, especially on, fuel runs. We've heard Bobby talk about it. Do I want to keep this thing trimmed out and hope that I can just stay out front and not have to worry? Or am I going to try to lock this thing down to where I can have a stable car to ensure that I run, the full 100 miles, 40 laps?
And let's talk a little bit more in towards that field a little bit. We mentioned Rafferty, Tyler Grafton, Christopher Tate, Aaron Roos, Adam Plunkin have been the names mentioned. Brandon McMahon, we've seen a lot in practice. We mentioned Ryan Broderick before tonight. Was amongst those drivers in that grouping. Gainey, Ryan Glenn Gray, Michael Sheridan in the top 10. The other big names, Dustin Griffiths, Dallas Breeze, Gregory Turner amongst those grouping of cars. Kyle May, we talked about. Carl Burke, we mentioned a few times throughout the evening. How overall do you feel about that field with some of those big names, since it's a very competitive field in of itself?
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no slouches really anywhere in this field, Patriot 100 or the Fake 500. It boils down 100% to, if you're going to learn, the Patriot 100 is a great place to learn. You're going to learn the racecraft. You're going to learn what it takes to run the Fake 500. It's essentially the same race, same car, same fueling. So it's going to be this whole entire week is just so very important, and a lot of the guys that are going to be in the Fake 500 are going to be tuned in to watch the Patriot 100 on Thursday, especially those rookies, to see how this race plays out. Can you get last year we didn't see many breakaways really at all. It was we saw a front group, kind of a mid group, and then a few guys that were just kind of riding and hanging out and doing their thing. So they're going to really be able to pay attention to see what the race and how it unfolds. But the amount of talent that's in the Patriot 100 this year is pretty astounding. Dustin Griffiths, I believe, was in the top 10 last year for the Fake 500, and then this year found himself on the outside looking in.
Yep.
Dallas Breeze, same thing. Dallas Breeze led a lot of the Patriot 100, actually. and had an unfortunate spin late in the race. And just again this year, some bad luck with weather and nerves and things like that just kind of shake you. So the amount of people that are in this field this year of the Patriot 100, it's a stronger field than we've had in the past and in the first year, no matter what way you look at it, because everybody's a little bit more experienced, everybody's got a few more laps under their belt. Each year it's just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher to win either one of these races.
Kicker, unfortunately for Griffiths, was with the focus towards that race, this weekend rather, was unable to make it due to an SR requirement for the iRacing What About Lost Nostra Drink Sprint Cars World Championship race last night at Cedar Lake. So that puts him in jeopardy on that side. That's the downside for him when it comes to the momentum, is there's not a lot of momentum towards that since he was unable to make that race by .001 safety rating, since you have to have your pro license to be able to compete on that side. Fortunately, on his side of things, it was an interesting race, you have to say, though, on that side. And interesting how the dirt guys go. Billy, I know you have some thoughts on that one.
It was. I know last night I think was one of the. It was a pretty. I wouldn't call it a rough race by any stretch of the imagination, but Cedar Lake it's a new track to the sim. Not a lot of races have been ran on it. We ran DRT ran there pretty much the opening night that it came out, and we saw a heck of a race. And again last night, same exact thing. That I think is truthfully one of the best dirt tracks that we have on the sim. And Dustin, I felt so sorry for him, and we kind of joked about it in the group chat. He was on the SR grind. He spent a week focusing on the fake 500 and really just was kind of taking a little bit of a break on the dirt side. And him and his family went out to eat last night as he was working on his SR grind, and they legitimately got into a small fender bender, and that put him about a half hour behind, and that was about all that it took. So we ribbed Dustin a little bit and said that the 2x off of the sim was what kept him out of it, unfortunately. So, but tough break for Dustin. He'll be back, I know. But momentum wise, his family actually owns Crescent Donut in Bloomington, Indiana. They're the title sponsor of the Patriot 100 once again this year. So just a big thank you to them for supporting this event, and legitimately some of the best donuts you'll find anywhere. But they really, they're a bunch that believes in this race, and Dustin is an Indianapolis man, and he really enjoys this race a lot, and he ran a really good race last year too. So it was unfortunate he missed out on the pro race. He'll be able to still run the Crescent Donut Patriot 100 this upcoming weekend, or this upcoming Thursday, I should say. So I know he's looking forward to that still, and as well as the midget race on Friday. So a lot of guys, and that's another piece of the puzzle too. If you're entered into both races and you may have missed the fake 500, you can treat the Patriot 100 like your Super Bowl, and then also run the dirt race on Friday. We saw Hayden Cardwell in the chat a little bit ago saying he was really looking forward to the night before the 500. That's going to be it's a good dynamic to get some of the dirt guys in and involved in the fake 500 festivities. I think those guys are going to really enjoy the format that we have going on. A little bit different than what we see on the DRT side, but going to be a lot of on-track action, single car qualifying, which we don't get to see very much on the dirt side. But as a guy that really truthfully embraces qualifying and enjoys it, it'll be a pretty good broadcast come Friday night.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one to see how those drivers handle the circuit and plan things around for that type of event as well, as we're just past 2 hours to go in today's practice session, sponsored by Redline Race Designs with the design staff of Dave Ward and Colton West. Be sure to find them on Facebook at Redline Race Designs tonight. Oh, and by the way, the night before, the Fake 500 entries, I believe, are still open, correct, Billy?
Yeah, we're just about full. We're taking 60 cars, taking 60 cars into the event as we want to have a full server. The way the format, the way that the format is set up is actually, it's kind of brutal. We wanted to do something. We wanted to do something a little bit different than what a lot of people have seen before. So we're going to take 60 cars, single car qualifying. Which, like I said, is one of my most favorite things. Favorite things to do. You really get. We're gonna see the best of the best with single car qualifying. You're gonna see what you got. Track conditions are gonna play a big factor in that as the track starts to wear in and dry out. So we could use or could see some guys, like a Hayden Cardwell, who's a really fast guy on the dirt, one of the best. He gets a bad draw, he could be in some trouble. So 6 heat races, taking 2 out of the heats, and then going to run some qualifying races, some B mains. So it's going to be a fun night. Really looking forward to it. But yeah, there is some spots still available, not too many. So be sure to get with Zane on that to get your entry forms in. And then before we go into, kind of a waiting list game to make sure that we can get the full 60 cars. Last year, we had very close to a full 60 for the night before the 500 at IRP with the sprint car, and was an absolute fantastic race. Skylar Brown won that one, and I believe he's entered into the midget race this year as well too. So a lot of guys pulling double duty. There's a $50 bonus as well. Oh boy, Stephen Hill gets real close. But there's a $50 bonus to the highest averaging finisher in both the Fake 500 and the night before the 500. So there is some extra cash on the line too if you can run both.
And that's going to be intriguing as well. And as some more of these cars make their way around a racetrack, keep in mind that the night before, first place $125, second place $175, to third $60, then $50. It goes down increments of 5 all the way to $23 for a top 15 run, $20 for a feature race make. That is a plus 440 overall to the total on that side as well. Some big investment coming in for that side of the event.
Well, and that's something that we've tried to do with even the Fake 500. You see a lot of events on iRacing paying really big money up front, but it only pays the top 2 or 3. With this, with this kind of a program, if you've made the fake, if you've basically made the Fake 500, you put some scratch in your pocket. Same thing with the midget race. If you can make that field, you're going to put a little bit of scratch in your pocket. So it's a very it's going to be a fun deal to see how aggressive some of these guys get on come Friday night, trying to put some money in their pockets.
Once again, that is Dirt Midgets at Kokomo, which is, oh, by the way, Zane, the next track you'll be racing a sprint car in on Monday night as well, after putting some respect to your name in that respective B main.
Yeah, you want another B main run? I'll give it to you.
So you had an interesting race until you went into the catch fence and went out of the park.
Yeah, I got caught up in that first caution there. I didn't see it, and then by the time I saw what was happening, I was like on the brakes trying to turn right, and I hit him, so I got a 4X for that, and then I don't know where the other 8X came into play. I got 2, me and Cole barely touched, got 2 for that. I got, I think, 4 at the end there. Mason kind of got sideways coming off of 4 about 10 laps ago or so, and then ended up Xing out for the race. But I don't know, I've been telling all the team guys, it's just like, I was like really into pro when it started, and as it's kind of gone on, I was like, man, really taking this serious kind of takes the fun out of it. Like, I just want to show up and race. It's when I do the best. So I didn't turn a single lap at Cedar Lake in a sprint car, 410 at least, that entire week.
I can attest to that. When there was, I can't remember which race it was, but Zane put, hundreds and hundreds of laps into a race, and absolutely went and laid an egg. And then the nights that he shows up and was just like, all right, what set should I use to go qualify? He'll go turn 10 laps and go, here's the line I'm running, and he goes 4th quick. So it's I was not shocked in the slightest last night to see Zane qualify fourth, and then I must say, impartial standpoint, the B main run that he had might be the drive of the year so far that I've seen. Maybe Cardwell last night coming from the back to, I believe, fourth.
Yes,
That
18
was
fourth.
pretty impressive. But
He gained half of them in one lap.
Yeah, Hayden is a special talent on dirt. That is for sure. And
He had the balls that were on the top on like the opening lap, and I didn't because again I just threw in a set that I had no experience with because I didn't practice. So I was kind of scared, and then once I kind of got comfortable, I went up there. Same thing in the B main. I was running a set I have not ran, and then I was like, I don't really want to run the top on the first lap, and then I was like, all right. Once I got by someone, or once I kind of got by, Greg there, and then I started catching Ryan, I was like, oh, I have a shot. Let's go. And then I've never driven a car so hard for like 5 laps in my life than I did there. And then once I got by Josh, I just slammed the door on him because Cedar Lake, there you can just slide anyone pretty much from 30 car lengths back, it feels like. I mean, that's what I slid Josh from 5 back or something like that. So I was kind of like slam the door on him and then just hold him off for these final 2 laps, which I did, and then the B main happened. But I don't know. To me, like, that was the most fun I think I've had the entire pro season. I left Discord because I was upset about what happened in the heat race. Left Discord, came back in the Discord, and I was just screaming. I was like so pumped up.
As soon as he got upside down in the heat race, you just heard the little doo-doo as somebody was leaving Discord. I didn't even have to look to see who it was. Automatically knew it was Zane. Felt extremely bad. But the Pro Series is just one of those. I was talking to Greg LeMay about it last night. The Pro Series, you can go run any official race you want. You can go run any league you want. Oh, is Adam Walker upside down pretty big? You can go run any race you want. It doesn't matter. When you get into a Pro Series event, it's completely different. It is absolutely... It's like the difference between horseshoes and hand grenades. I mean, it's not even remotely close. And just like the fake 500, experience matters. The guys that have that pro experience, Hayden in the late models, and even a guy like Tyler Schell, his first pro experience in the late models did not go the way that he anticipated. Last year in the sprint cars, a little bit better, couple of podiums, but nothing really to write home about majorly. But now this year started to turn it on a little bit. So that pro experience definitely makes a big difference, especially on these bigger stages. The bigger iRacing gets, the more popular it gets. It's going to be fun to watch the Pro Series the next few years. There's a lot of talent that's coming through dirt officials now of names that I've not really seen all that much that are going to be a force to be reckoned with over the next couple of years.
It's going to be intriguing. It's going to be intriguing how everything all plays out. I believe some of the fans also very intrigued in that one as well, coming up on Friday once again for that one. But about approaching 1 hour 45 minutes to go in Redline Race Designs practice day. It's still Blackford in first. Skylar Brown's now second with a 46.665. Then Seth DeMarchand with a 46.675. Mike Rasmus and Tyler Kendall, the dirt racer, in fifth. Daniel Sagers is in sixth. Kyle Dagger in seventh. Shake Keiko along with Kyle May, Hank Silver, your top 10 right now in practice. Second to last practice overall. 25 cars have made their way to the racetrack. 23 have set times so far. In the differential in times has been fairly close to, keep in mind, 9/10 from the top of the board to the bottom of the board. The top 10 separation only up to about 0.4 of a second, Zing.
Say it again there, Justin.
0.4 separation in practice amongst these competitors in the top 10. Very close.
Yeah, 0.4, it's close. At the same time, it's kind of far, though, too, because you got to think a lot of these guys are running in the draft. So they kind of should be around the same speed, but I think that's just telling on who maybe already has a race set kind of, figured out. Blackford, ran this race last year. He had a good setup. He had the fastest qualifying setup by far, as we saw him and DeMerchant go quick on their respective days. But, I think he's got the race set figured out. So I'm not really surprised to see him up there with a 46.52, which at around 192, 93 miles an hour, I think that could be in contention for fastest practice speed on record for the fake. I'll have to do a quick check here, but not surprised to see him up there. And then, some of these guys still kind of working on their cars, maybe using a set from last year, trying to tune it up just a little bit, make it perfect. And then, of course, some of the rookies kind of starting from scratch on a race setup. So interesting to see here. I think we're going to have a really big pack here to keep an eye on, and we'll see kind of how this all plays out.
Well, and I think we noticed this, the way that these cars are, even in a draft, everybody's going about the same speed, but there's always that one car that gets a really big run from a little ways back. And these cars, using the NASCAR term, they suck up really, really well. So it's once you start getting that draft, it's easy to gain, but once you get there, you almost kind of stall out, and you've got to get your timing right, and that's another big piece of practice right now. Is we'll go on board. Actually, let's go on board with Dan Zagers, as he's actually kind of working traffic. You can hear him right there, lifting down the straightaways because he's already drafting in to not run over these guys, lifting into the corners through the center to make sure that you're not running over anybody, but also to keep that draft. We're going to see him. I would expect to see him pull up on the back of Chris Peterson, and you can already see him start to reel in the 2 leaders as well. So that's going to pick you up a lot of pace. The further back you are, as long as you can stay in the draft and not lose it.
Yeah, the double toe, the triple toe, essentially off the air cards. It's going to be critical.
Yeah, it's a leapfrog race. The ability, if you get 2 guys, as you can really hear the motor screaming now, on the rev limiter, actually getting into the corner, having to lift off. So we're going to see a lot of strategies, and again, this is a great opportunity to play with gearing as well, because the gearing that you use during the race is not going to be the same gearing that you use for qualifying, because in the draft you're going to be turning more RPMs, and it's a totally different setup, totally different atmosphere as far as the race goes. So you really have to learn how to race with these cars. As the rookies like Hank Silver that are in the field, going to really have to play it easy early on, at least, to get your legs right, get your feet wet, really, and figure out what you need to do for the rest of the race.
Keep in mind, 5 gears in these cars, and some of the discussion talked about when drivers were trying to assist others is you want to use 5th gear mainly in the draft, 4th gear if you've got the clean air, because you go off on those gears, it can bog you down. And keep in mind, despite the wind, these cars are gusting their way in the draft up to nearly 200 miles an hour at one end of the speedway, the rev limiter at 202 at the other end, for reference sake. That's currently with the winds seeing those higher speeds out of turn 3, Zane.
Yeah, I think that this is and again, wind matters too. Brian Blackford said that this weekend, that wind is going to make a big difference on your gearing too. So, you find a gear that works for this kind of a wind speed, may not work on race days if you're going to have a headwind through the short chute or whatever it may be. So it's going to be a definite. It's a chess game at this point. A lot of learning, a lot of setup work going into play right here.
Is there a preference you would have for where you want the wind, in your opinion? If so, where?
I personally, if it was me, I would rather have it out of the south. If you're going to get it, we saw west to northwest winds that were causing a lot of havoc off of turn number 2, which is a pretty treacherous corner to begin with. but then made it exponentially harder with the wind. We saw a lot of guys struggling with that through turns 1 and 2 over qualifying. If it's me, I would love to see a south wind. Ideally, you'd love to see a 2 to 3 mile an hour wind, but in the case of what the weather gods do, you really have to. I think you have to have a set of gears in mind if you see a westerly wind, and you have to have a set of gears in mind if you're if there's a wind out of the south, because you're going to be getting that big, massive push down the straightaway if the winds are out of the south. So you got to make sure that you've got enough gear to get down the back straightaway, but also enough gear to get down the front straightaway as well.
So far, by the way, the drivers today have put anywhere from, in most cases, for some of the drivers just getting in, 20 laps. Others, like Brian Blackford, 72. 70 for Chris Brenner. 71 for Adam Blocker. That's a ton of laps as we take a look at the Catch Fence Apparel Speed Cam and look at how quick these cars are going to be rumbling on race day.
Yeah, and this is this is just kind of a precursor to the kind of race you're going to see if you do enjoy the NASCAR pack racing type of environment, or really the type of environment you see at Indianapolis right now with the real world Indy 500. You're going to see these cars not necessarily being able to really break away. It's going to be interesting, I think, on race day, though, if two guys can get hooked up out front, if they can leapfrog each other enough to kind of get a breakaway and run within a pack by themselves and start a breakaway. But last year we saw 5 to 6 cars get out front, kind of run away, another 5 to 6 cars group together. So you're going to have to be patient, but you're also going to have to be aggressive to make sure you stay within the draft. Oh, as we've got a wreck into 3.
And a massive one. Hank Silver, whoa, and Brian Blackford's in it. Tyson Landis goes flying into the infield. Kyle May upside down. Dallas Breeze destroyed. This is how. It was a 4-car pack. It turned into more than that for the melee.
Yeah, it's that's the reason why you practice at this point. That's that real world, that experience right there of running in a pack, knowing, we saw it last year with guys being really aggressive early on in the race, and we're going to see the same sort of thing, but I think we're going to see more of a passive-aggressive race this year than we did last year. Again, knowing that you don't have that faster pair sitting in your pocket, you don't have a freebie. You can't make that move. You're better off getting out of it, paying attention, listening to your spotter. The majority of these guys, I would go as far as to say most of the field is going to have an actual spotter in the race, sitting with them either in Discord or TeamSpeak or whatever it may be, that's in the lobby, that's calling the race for them, that's helping them out, being another eye in the sky, just like you do in the real 500, of making sure that you're clear, making sure that you are staying in line when you need to stay in line, but when it's time to go, as Baden has said multiple times, let the dog off the chain.
Those spotters are going to be really, really busy, keep in mind. And when listening to some of the in-car audio where you hear those spotter commands, especially for even the early 2000s IndyCar chassis, the spotters are constantly in your telling you inside, because in real life, you make tire-to-tire contact even, it could spell absolute disaster. Those spotters are going to be very busy. You have to think, Billy.
Oh, absolutely. They're, as another big pack goes out, they're going to have... I've spotted multiple Payless Little 500s at the Anderson Speedway, which is a sprint car race that's actually ran in the month of May during the night before the 500, or before the real 500, or the big 500. which that's 33 sprint cars on a paved high bank quarter-mile racetrack. And the leader of that race is in lap traffic, lap 10, with that amount of cars on the racetrack. And it is a very busy day for those of us up in the spotter stand. And you know, I've spotted a couple iRacing races before, and it is just as stressful to spot for these races as it is that one, because there's so many unknowns of what can happen if there's, you know, if you've noticed that there's some netcode issues throughout the day. You're going to want to make sure that your driver knows that and stays relatively away from people. You know, we're seeing two wide racing right now with Aaron Rouse and Tyson Landis, staying away from each other, really giving each other a lot of room. That's going to be important come race day, because you don't want to get too close to somebody, touch wheels, and cause a massive pileup. But it looks like we're going to have a guy that led some of the fake 500 this year and was just shy of making the fake 500, but he is in the Patriot 100 this year. Braden McMahon, how are you doing? Maybe?
Braden McMahon, do you have a copy?
Hold on.
Braden McMahon, he's out on racetrack right now trying to...
I think he's actually in the pit lane, so we'll give him a moment here.
Hello, Braden.
Sorry, I got different push-to-talk buttons for TeamSpeak, Discord, and in iRacing, so I was trying to remember which one was which.
See, it's good to know that buttons on your wheel and what they do. So
yeah, I just smash and hope it turns out well.
You had an interesting qualifying weekend. Not really what you were wanting, but you still got a potential shot to make it into the big show on Saturday. Tell us about your qualifying.
Really, I felt like my best chance to put her in the show was my first attempt on pole day, and those were really my first laps I had turned since the previous fake 500. I didn't put together what I felt like were good laps, and I was still just a tick out from being locked in, so I had confidence going into, I was locked out, felt I could lock in, so I went again, and at the end of pole day, just trying to lock it in, and realized I wasn't going to make it on fuel. I made a mistake with the setup, so that was my own fault. Stuffed it in the wall, trying to do the math in my head, and forgot I was driving a car. And then I just had a terrible pill draw on bump day, and just couldn't put together 4 good laps.
Yeah, it was tough to see, especially I know last year you were fan favorite in the Team Jack Foundation car and led some of the race, actually. Had a really good run going, and a couple of unfortunate spins later on in the race that kept you out of the win, but glad to see you back, though. Hopefully still having a good time and enjoying yourself a little bit. Cool to see Hank Silver and Chase Rodman getting into the field, though, this year.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun hanging out with Chase and Hank and Anthony Carini as well, just trying to get them some speed. And it was funny, I was their driver coach for the rookie race, and then whole day I was telling them what I feel like they could do a little bit better, and then they put it in the show, and I'm going to be watching them. So I think I'm good at coaching. I'm not very good at driving, but it's been a lot of fun. This is a fun event. And it just shows how great of an event it is with, half the field that's in the show this year didn't even participate or wasn't in the show last year. So everyone stepped their game up, and I was just a tick off, and it shows. So I'm in the Patriot 100, and there's a stacked field of 33 going on for the fake 500.
Yeah, it's definitely it's been an odd year, but glad to see. Glad to see there's some new blood in this deal, and it's going to keep getting harder and harder, I think, each year as this progresses. But from what everybody that we've talked to has all had a good time, whether they're in the fake or the Patriot. So just glad to see everybody's having a good time and enjoying themselves, getting some drafting practice in today, and figuring out what to do with gearing and running these cars. You with some race experience last year, you're going to be able to help Chase and the rest of them boys make a run to the front on Saturday.
That's the plan. I've basically been trying to get Hank to learn how to pass in the draft, and one, get him comfortable with, I think turn 3 is where the wind's really affecting the cars. So just trying to get him comfortable with making sure he keeps air on his nose so he can get through a corner, but also make speed to pass people. I felt like last year I learned a few things to where I could make passes on corners and feel comfortable enough to stick it out and I guess hero ball it, and pass some people. So I'm just trying to get Hank comfortable to where I don't know where Chase is tonight, but Hank, just trying to get him comfortable and in the draft, and then go forward from teaching them how to get by people.
Yeah, it'll be. I think it's going to be a pretty fun race. There's a lot of packs going on right now of guys, and really it's been relatively clean. I mean, we've seen a few wrecks today so far, but everybody's kind of, given a little patience. I think there's a little bit of a different dynamic this year with knowing that you don't have that fast repair to bank on like last year. As I say that, they crash. But knowing that you don't have that fast repair, that's, I think, probably the biggest element change that we've had so far this year. Of guys have to be patient. We saw some really ultra-aggressive moves last year that we probably won't see this year. Might only take one aggressive move to really change the complexion of the race.
Yeah, it's last year I kind of took the mindset of just survive towards the end, and I feel like that's going to be important without the fast repair, because last year I knew I had that in my back pocket, and then I crashed bad enough to where I got stuck on the fence and had to tow anyways and ruin my race. But with Hank, I think our goal is to just survive for a little bit and let some of these people maybe get a little too aggressive too early, and then get through the crashes, and then hopefully be there at the end.
Yeah, so real racing season. Hopefully, we've got some COVID-free stuff with your dad not running the All-Star Circuit of Champions. What's the racing plans for Braden McMahon this upcoming year?
Racing plans is probably racing my way down to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at Middle Tennessee State, and try and get my, adult life together. But I also there's a tempting little schedule that my dad will be running that I can't really talk about too much. But he's at towards the end of his career, so I know I don't want to miss out on big races. So those big ones, if he's potentially there, I plan on going. So hopefully no COVID, and we get to see Paul McMahon back in victory lane a couple more times.
Yeah, as a Paul McMahon fan, as a longtime Paul McMahon fan, before I knew you, glad to see him still racing. It's extremely weird to me that we're this old now. I can remember when Shane Stewart was running like the Melton number 9 car, his own family car, like back in the late 90s. And I still, for some odd reason, think Paul and Shane and Darren, 3 guys that, well, 2 of them have officially really retired. Your dad will still race, I'm sure, now and then if he can. But it's just so weird to me that we're seeing a true change of the guard in the sprint car world right now.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, I guess, for me at least, because growing up, like, we hung out, it was like, when, 05 through 07-ish, Shane shared a t-shirt trailer with us, so we traveled around with Shane a lot. He actually saved my life one time at Mall of America. We were at the amusement park inside the mall, and it was a ride. I don't remember exactly what, but it would swing and would go upside down. And I was so little that when it went upside, I was tall enough, but I wasn't wide enough. So when it went upside down, I started to fall out. I think I would have been fine anyways, but as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, I felt like Shane saved my life. And it's just being around Shane forever. It's kind of sad seeing him not racing anymore, because obviously he proved this year he can still get the job done. But now we got a whole bunch of young guys like Carson getting into an elite ride, and then my buddy PPM putting together his own outlaw team, or I think he's announced that. I hope he has.
We'll bleep that out if he didn't.
Okay. Whoops. But yes, this the young up and comers coming up. It's definitely a changing of the guard. Weird to get used to. Like Sheldon growing up with him, and now he's one of the stars on the Outlaw Tour. So it's definitely weird, but exciting too.
Yeah. So we'll let you go and get back to some practice and helping out Buddy Hank and the rest of the boys, and good luck in the Patriot on Thursday, and hopefully we'll talk to you in Victory Lane.
All right, appreciate it, guys.
Barry McMahon, once again preparing for tonight's action. Overall, third row outside is where he stands for the Patriot 100. Just past 90 minutes to go in practice. Again, your top 10 to reset is Brian Blackford, set to Merchant, now second with a 46.564. Skylar Brown, Mike Rasmus, Tower Kendall, Daniel Zagers, Kyle Dager, with Shane Keiko, Kyle May, Hank Silver. Your top 10 just outside that mark by 9 seconds. Brian Broderick, Chris Springer, Adam Locker, Bobby Rafferty among your top contenders inside the top 15. 24 have now set times of note. The drivers yet to set times who are in session: Justin Carey, Keith Jeffrey, Chase Rodman for tonight's action. And a lot of dirt racing history there we just heard, Billy, and some news here and there, but overall, someone that sounds very happy about this event for McMahon. He is 16th so far.
Well, I thought it was cool last year. His mom Jan was in chat the entire race, cheering on Braden, and I know Paul watched a little bit of it when he could, and it's so cool to me to see guys like that, run these races and have a good time with them. Especially for Braden ran a sprint car for a couple years for his uncle Bobby out in California. Actually picked up a win at, I believe it was Antioch Speedway, at Antioch Speedway out in California, and he got to do something that not a lot of people do when his dad was running the Outlaw Tour. He got to race against his dad, and I know that's a really, really special moment for Braden. If you go to Braden's Twitter page, he's got a video pinned to the top of his timeline that is his dad watching on a phone Braden's first win and talking to him and coaching him through it like he was, like he's right there with him. And really good racing family, a lot of history. Paul, truthfully, one of the greats in sprint car racing, really one of the best qualifiers to ever exist, and a heck of a racer. Still has a lot of racing left in him, and just cool to see Braden being involved in this, and really do appreciate him, and helping get Hank Silver up to speed, Chase Rodman, and all those guys. So it's good to see, and just appreciate Braden and the rest of those guys for coming.
Absolutely. It's been a big event so far. And now, as preparation reaches its final couple hours, let's take a quick break. We come back. Final hour and 20 minutes plus for Redline Race Designs Practice Day for the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway on Elbows Up TV. You're watching coverage for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 and the Crescent Donut Patriot 100.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to coverage for the 2021 Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500 and the Crescent Donut Patriot 100 for more coverage of Redline Race Designs Practice Day. Redline Race Designs is owned and designed paint schemes by Dave Ward and Colton West. Be sure to check them out on Facebook at Redline Race Designs tonight. Just past an hour and 20 minutes to go in session where Brian Blackford has said in quote on social media, he's got a rocket tonight. And so far that rocket has a 46.520 at the top of the board and one has been a very hot track. You see the top 10 now on your screen of Blackford to Merchant, Brown, Rasmus, Kendall, Zagerts, Dagger, Keiko, May, and Silver. Separation about 0.4 of a second throughout this session. But the big key moment is the preparation that these drivers have been putting in for the past hour and a half plus. All in the name of trying to come away with the top prizes and victory. Whether it's the Patriot 100 or the Fake 500. This year's Patriot 500 winner, $25 received. The Fake 500, $275. The top three, in fact, as well, Billy, for the Fake 500 this year, received bonus prizes from Butt Kicker as well. $150 for third, $175 for second.
Yeah, we're really happy with the way that the purse came out this year. Again, I know we've posted on social media a few times over the last couple of days. Anybody out there that wants to be a part of this, contingency awards are always welcome. Anything now is just going to go towards Patriot 100 payout. As well as any other contingencies that we want to do or that somebody's out there that wants to do. So it's been a very good season so far with sponsorship. A lot of guys coming back. Like we said, huge thanks. I've said it for 4 or 5 days now. Huge thanks to Matt Hedinger and everybody at Wicked Energy Gum and the Wicked Cushion family that supports sim racing as much as they do, throughout the year, whether it's dirt races, pavement races, any of that sort of thing. Just a huge thanks to them. So be sure to check them out at wickedenergygum.com. Epperson Painting, they came on big with the night before the 500 again this year. Bobby Smith made an attempt for the Fake 500 last year. Bobby Smith, actually the 1994 USAC Rookie of the Year. So really, really cool, to see everybody coming back. Big appreciation to Indie Racing Images, everybody that helps us out on that. Redline Race Designs came up this afternoon and wanted to be a part of the Fake 500. So again, if anybody's out there that wants to help out, more than welcome to. Nothing too big or nothing's too big and nothing's too small. So anytime you want to be involved in the Fake 500, anybody's out there that wants to be involved, you are more than certainly welcome to do so.
Absolutely, and take a look at this as well. The army of Jim Beaver Esports cars is now in full force. Not only Rafferty on the track now, but Dave Bodio and Keith Jeffrey, who are set to line up Bodio inside row 8, Jeffrey middle row 8. So there's this preparation coming in where Rafferty's got the early data. Now the others can try and learn from what they picked up here, Zing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be good for the teams here to get kind of figured out what's happening, and then definitely for the Jim Beaver Esports guys, and as well as Elbows Up, that are kind of split. They have cars in the Patriot and they have cars in the Fake, so they can use the cars in the Patriot to kind of get a read on what it's going to be like when you're actually racing around other cars and in traffic and out in clean air, to kind of relay that to the guys in the Fake. And definitely for the Jim Beaver Esports team, a lot of those guys are, both of them, Keith Jeffrey and Dave Buddy, are going to start right next to each other, I believe, unless one of them got moved a row after.
Oh yes,
but they're going to be right in the middle of the field, so they're going to be all around traffic in the early stages of this race and definitely later on. So a lot of R&D is going to go into today, tomorrow, and then I would not be surprised if they start picking Bobby's head a little bit after Thursday night. And same thing for Dustin Griffiths and Dallas Breeze for elbows up. So it's going to be interesting to see. A lot of guys are going to have that R&D session or the chance to find out what's going to happen Thursday to take into their Saturday session.
Among the drivers are currently on racetrack are Kyle Dager, Shane Keiko, Adam Blocker, who has put up 91 laps this session. That is one of the highest totals. Rafferty, Jeffrey Stewart, who is leading a grouping of cars at the moment. Dallas Breeze, Stephen Hill, Chris Peterson, Chase Rodman, John Harper, Jeffrey and Bodio. The driver, only one driver is yet to set a time. That is Justin Carey. At the moment, we talked about the news involving him as we take a look at one of the groupings here. And he mentioned some of the elbows up side of things, Billy. Curious on how some of those drivers are feeling entering this week on some of those races, especially Jeffrey here, who's trying to cut his way among the drivers here with near contact.
Yeah, Jeffrey, like we talked about over qualifying weekend, wasn't even sure he was going to be able to make the race. He's had a very, very hectic work season with his day job that currently working 7 days a week. So he didn't know if he was going to have the time to run this race, and late in the day decided, you know what, I have to try. And so Jeffrey, good to see him in there. Dallas was extremely bummed to not put it into the fake 500 field this year. He had the speed. He knew he had the speed to get in. As Jeffrey gets a little bit of a wreck down the straightaway. But Dallas knew that he had the speed to get in. He said it himself. He just felt the pressure and actually sent a screenshot of his Fitbit that he had on during qualifying. And as he sat on pit road, his heart rate was up to like 125 to 130 beats a minute. Just nerves, and which is exactly what we wanted out of an event like this. But I know James Tiernan was extremely frustrated that he didn't get another chance to put on pole. James felt like he was I think really going into qualifying the odds-on favorite to put himself into the field as the pole sitter, and didn't get another chance to go do that. So he felt like he left some out on the table, and going to be looking for redemption on Saturday. So yeah, split drivers, a couple of them in the fake 500, a couple of them in the Patriot 100. I know a lot of them are going to be running the midget race on Friday as well. So good outing for them, and impartially, I'm proud of all the boys.
Mm-hmm. Right now, they're all spread amongst the board at the moment. As we take a look back towards that pack once more. Zane, it's been an impressive session, have to say, for Blackford and DeMerchant, especially as we talked about DeMerchant coming in a bit late, but Blackford so far very quick. He mentioned being proud of the speed he helped with Landon Castle for last year. He's been very quick all week so far in preparation for this week's events.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of expected here. As we're talking, DeMerchant's going to go to the top of the board with a 46.504. It's about 193.5 some miles an hour. So definitely moving here late in the run, but it's kind of hard to, go off the practice speeds and then think maybe that's going to be race speed as well. Realistically, I think it's going to carry over well. I definitely think DeMerchant and, Blackford, along with Cal, going to be some of the fastest guys come race day, but it don't mean much because we just saw there DeMerchant kind of slap the wall at the right rear of the car, getting a little bit loose. If that happens in the race, that could be your race. I mean, if you tap the wall at all and damage your car, you're gonna have to come to pit road and get that fixed. And you go laps down at Indy, you typically don't get those laps back. We see on the NASCAR side a lot. Lucky dogs, wave arounds. If you stay out, you can get a wave around, or you can get a wave around. For blah blah blah. Here at Indy, there are no lucky dogs. It doesn't pay to be the first car a lap down. If you go a lap down, you have to get a true natural wave around. And the only way you get that is being a lap down car, staying out when everyone else comes to pit road, and every single lead lap car has to pit for you to get that lap back. If just one stays out, you're still a lap down when you go green black flag racing. So they're fast, but they're on edge, and any mistake is gonna send you to pit road. It's going to require repair. You're likely to go a lap down, and you got to hope and pray you get a caution flag after a long green flag stint, and you can get a wave around, or else your race is over. So speed doesn't necessarily transfer to a win. I think it transfers to being a fast car, but with speed comes risk, and with risk comes high reward and super high risk, definitely here at Indy. So be interested to see how it plays out. I think Blackford and them, they might stabilize this setup a little bit come race time, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
And the interesting thing when it comes to practices like this and whatnot is, in some cases, Billy, there's been cases where teams will go into a practice for hours on end, as we talked about a little bit last week, and make a change or a couple changes, try that out for a run, go back in, make a couple more changes if need be, go out for an hour run, keep on getting more and more data. What do you feel they would need to adjust, some of these teams now, knowing once again what they have to do to make those incremental changes we're talking about here to try and find that extra little bit of speed parts or speed bits?
Well, and I think from a standpoint, you have to be running in traffic most all the time. If you're running in traffic, you're going to learn a lot more about what your car wants, what it needs. You know, we heard Braden saying, you know, making sure that you've got air over the nose wing, making sure you've got the right amount of air running underneath the car with the ground effects. So those minute changes, and then also running a long fuel run to know what you need to do with those anti-roll bars, using your onboard tools for when the car starts getting looser and looser and looser as the tires start to wear. This car is we got a big one or spinner off of turn number 2. You know, but you have to basically really learn and understand what the car wants through the entire fuel run. It doesn't pay to go out and run, you know, 2 or 3 laps, be very fast and on the ragged edge, because you can't do that for 500 miles. There's a fine line between getting the race car right for you for 500 miles and being fast. So you have to be careful about that. You know, I heard from somebody last night that ran some laps with Brian Blackford that, yeah, his car was extremely fast, but it was extremely sketchy as well. So can he do that for 500 miles? That's going to be, I think, a big question mark of, can he get that car stable with these kind of speeds? You know, can he make it even go a little bit faster? We're seeing lap times now that are way, way quicker than what we saw in qualifying, obviously, with the draft. And it's going to be important to get your car right for the draft, as well as knowing what tools to use and when throughout the race, because that's going to be, I think, the biggest thing, is making sure that you're using your tools all to their advantages, using those roll bars, making slight air pressure adjustments on pit stops. That's all going to be very, very important come race day.
Absolutely. And here's something to think about too, Zane. As of note, Landon Castle has made his way to the pit lane and is rolling onto the racetrack now in the blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief car in the number 89, number 30 on your timing and scoring screens. He's now rolling amongst the next drafting pack. As a driver, and I'm curious on how you would build this towards this direction. Do you build your car towards speed overall, or do you try and adapt your driving to the speed of the setup, in your opinion, Zane, for an event like this?
I think you got to go. You got to adjust your setup to your driving. I don't think you can really adjust your speed to the setup, because 500 miles.
Yeah.
That's a long race. I mean, we're talking 3-4 hours. You know, if this thing were to go green to checkered, realistically, it's not going to do that more than likely. I think we're going to see a couple cautions. So you got to have a car that's going to be underneath you. You know, one slight mistake. There's no room for error here at Indy. Anyone that's ever raced here in real life or in any big sim event on iRacing can tell you there's no room for error. You can't just go into the turn, get a little loose, do a quick spin and recover. If you spin here at all, there's a wall pretty much perpendicular. Unless you make some sort of deal with you know whatever you believe in or whatever. I mean, you're going to hit the wall. Coming off the turns, if you spin to the inside, there ain't much runoff room. It ain't Daytona. The wall is, probably 50, 60 yards away from the track. So You definitely got to adjust your setup to be comfortable, and if it means sacrificing speed, then absolutely sacrifice speed. But I don't think I could be on the edge for 200 laps and not make one mistake. There's just so much risk there.
Absolutely. Kind of towards that direction as well, especially with this type of car. Knowing the stock car side, it's for some teams, you have to drive it a specific sort of way. But your thoughts, Billy, here on the driver on board with Landon Castle, one of the big names in this year's event. As we talked about, qualified on the last row this year. With some of the shuffling already taking place, he moves now to the inside of row 11 for the start.
Yeah, I think he was kind of shocked shocked as well. You know, he made some mistakes on pole day. Truthfully, that kept him out of being locked in. He was definitely one of the fastest cars in the field, if not the fastest car in the field. Just made a few mistakes and put himself towards the back, and had to suffer through bump day and go through that entire process of in the field, out of the field, and making sure that he was into the race towards the end was pretty sketchy for him. I know we interviewed him after that, and he wasn't really worried about getting bumped out of the field with who was left after a few of the last cars went. But starting from way back there, just like Zane was saying, the set that Brian Blackford is going to be running, where he's going to be up front most of the day, that might not be the same exact thing for Landon. Landon may need a different feel in the car, especially running through traffic. So this practice session is going to be very important to Landon, working in traffic and knowing what that car needs, how the air is running over the nose wing. When we were on board with him, we saw some lifts out of him throughout the corner to get the thing to turn. And when you're tucked in up behind somebody, there's not a lot of air going over that as you see him get tight off the corner and into the fence. So that's all part of the learning game right now. All part of the learning game when it comes to starting that far back. When you're starting back there comparatively to up front, it's an entirely different race. Your mentality has to make a change of, this is no longer about winning the race or leading the most laps. It's about survival, getting yourself to the front, and making sure that you have a really good and stable car through traffic. That's going to be the most important thing for him.
Keep in mind, Zane, it's been a big year for Landon. The return of the LCQ seed, also known as the Landon Castle's qualifying challenge earlier this year, where Eddie Kerner took home the victory. Of course, taking part in the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series, where he had some good runs and made some headlines there with Blue Emu. And really that relationship with Blue Emu growing this year with him in that respective organization, on top of trying to help Morgan Shepherd's organization the past couple of years on the Xfinity Series side.
Yeah, I mean, I think things are really trending Landon's way here in really all aspects. I'm really hoping the NASCAR thing comes around for him. But, I mean, just what he's done for sim racing, it's so big. Him and Blue Emu have partnered together and put on some great events. You had Landon Castle's LCQ. We had a couple other events in there. You had the Firecracker 400, which I think last year,
yeah,
as much as I hate to say this, I think was the biggest private event held on iRacing. $12,000 being given away there, and I'm honored that I got to start that race. But seeing that event and being held by Landon and Parker, and kind of knowing where that inspiration comes from, I think is something that I'm always gonna take away from iRacing more than anything. Is not so much making the Pro Series or anything like that, but building kind of like the relationships with people in the sim and with the serves. Kind of, I wouldn't say befriending. I wouldn't say I'm friends with them, but there's an open line of communication there. If I ever need something or whatever, I can reach out to Blackford or any of those guys and ask a question or see if they want to do something. And I think that's cool. And then last year the Fake was a big inspiration for the Firecracker, and it kind of led that event to be what it was. And for me, that means the world to us. I think it means we're doing our job here. And I don't think I could be more honored to have people like Landon and Parker kind of carry that on into their own event and outdo us, which just makes me want to
Yeah.
And then even more, in which we're building up there every year. And
Yep.
This event, from the get-go, it's never been about the money. It was, never designed to be about the money either. Winning this event isn't, hey, I made $1,000 or whatever. It's, hey, I just put in 2 weeks of my ass, made a field, and I just won a 500-mile Indy race against 33 other cars. So, but yeah, it's good to see Landon, Kathleen's going his way, participate in this event, host the Firecracker, and then come back this year and kind of be a big storyline, I think, going into race day, having to start from now the inside of the back row. So, be interested to see what happens, and, hopefully he streams this year, and we get to see something even crazier come out of some inspiration from this event and Firecracker.
It's going to be a crazy one, I think, absolutely, as we are now under 1 hour to go in today's Redline Race Designs Practice Day. To recap, it's DeMerchant, Blackford, Brown, Rasmus, and Kendall, your top 5 still. Chase Rodman has bumped his way up to 7th spot with a 46.871 of note behind Daniel Zagerts. Dagger, Keiko, and Kyle May is still inside the top 10. Kyle May looking fairly impressive with the help of the draft so far in this session, Billy. He's kept himself up there, and in race trim has consistently been running 47.5s as well in the draft packs.
Yeah, I can confirm also in real life, Kyle May, not a qualifier. Never really, hasn't done a ton of it in real life, and just qualifying in general is extremely tough. And Kyle was one of those guys that he had a lot of bad luck qualifying with some spins and some crashes that left him on the outside looking in. Really good. He said that going into this, that he knew that he had a really good race setup. He ran 4th in the Patriot 100 last year from the back, and he's got a really good race car. Just in qualifying trim, just not the outright speed that he needed in order to make it into the field. So he's going to be looking to have a big day on Thursday at the Crestone Patriot 100 to try to put himself into that alternate spot into the big show on Saturday.
Absolutely. As bit of contact as he hits the tire that time with Shane Keiko's car trying to squeeze with Brian Blackford's group. And you mentioned as well that provisional, Zane, as your also duties are race control. Talk us through how that could function out.
It's pretty simple, actually, for an event like this. This whole event's about realism. This whole 2-week period's about realism. And a lot of what we do at Elbows Up Promotions, which is kind of our promoting part of Elbows Up SimSport, because we do it all. So it's about realism. So really, admins are we're gonna step in if there's a blatant fault for something that we felt like was a dumb move, should have never happened or been easily avoidable, and maybe penalized for that to discourage it. But outside of that, if 2 guys are racing side by side and they get together because, they're squeezing each other to the bottom and they're trying to race each other off the turn and they wreck, that's on them. That's fair game. That's what you get when you want to run at 190 miles an hour in an open wheel car side by side. So really the only things we're going to see admin-wise is penalties for blatant stuff. And then this year we're moving from iRacing cautions to admin cautions, to hopefully avoid getting a caution thrown for every single car spin in the short chutes. Last year we had a lot of guys, just lose the car coming out of the turn. They'd spin to the inside off the racing surface, but iRacing would still throw a yellow flag. So going to admin cautions this year to avoid that. So we'll see less cautions in the 2021 Fake 500 and Patriot 100. But race control-wise, I'm just kind of going to be watching. I'll have the broadcast up in the background, just listen to it. And I'll be enjoying the show really just like anyone else at home, just with a little bit extra added responsibility.
Yeah, and to kind of even go a little bit deeper with we've talked a lot about, if you can win the Patriot 100, what does that mean? That means you're the first alternate. If somebody on race day, last year we saw this with Garrett Smithley. Garrett Smithley actually put it into the Fake 500 on pole day.
Can I answer the question?
What's that?
Did Justin ask me a question? I just totally did not answer it. I'm half focused out, half focused in.
You're fine. But basically last year, Garrett Smithley actually made it into the race on pole day and got a call that morning to go run an asphalt super late model in real life up, I believe, in Concord. So one of the first races of the year for him, you know, you really can't turn that down. So late in the day, he had to turn his, you know, he had to say, well, I'm not going to be able to run the fake 500. So that opened the door for the winner, Mike Rasmus, to make it into the show and become the 33rd starter. So as an alternate, it's important to be there ready to go just in case things do happen. So that's another piece of the Patriot 100 that, you know, it's not a guaranteed spot. It's not a freebie. Indy doesn't give freebies, but it's a way to potentially get yourself into the race, give you something to really race for on Thursday, and potentially, you know, put yourself into the big show on Saturday. That's really the main thing. And having that advantage, like we said, we saw last year, we saw Mike Rasmus pick up the win. Mike Rasmus pick up the win in the Patriot 100. He was the alternate, put himself into the show, ended up running third. So he had a phenomenal week. Got to run a lot of different races that week, and just how it goes sometimes.
Absolutely. Some drivers can make up to 70 laps, by the way, throughout the rest of the session for those keeping track at home. And one of the interesting marks is with all these laps is, for some, they've already turned almost 2 fake 500s in terms of miles and laps throughout preparation, but also the equipment. We talked about Landon Castle got his new specially designed steering wheel a couple weeks back as well, on top of other things. How important is it to make sure that equipment's all good to go for an event such as this thing?
Well, I'll answer that because Lord Zane's probably stuffing his face with pizza right now. But
I'm not eating. I'm trying to figure out how you do the math to go from seconds on a racetrack to speed, but then go from speed back to seconds. And it's just not checking out. So I'm really trying to figure it out.
Zane's always doing mathematical formulas and everything.
Do it.
He's a huge nerd.
But it doesn't make sense. All right, that's it. I can do it. I've already done it. The track record's 46.2 something, whatever. The issue is that when I try to solve it out the algebraic whatever way, it just doesn't add up. So I'm really trying to figure this out, and it's driving me crazy. And I'm like watching these guys racing a pack while listening to you, and you guys say my name, and I'm like, I don't really know what they asked, but I'm going to keep working on this math problem and hopefully answer the right question. So that's why I seem lost whenever you ask me something and I go on a tangent about something completely different. Because I've been doing this for like the last 40 minutes trying to figure out why this math isn't adding up.
Well, that's the most Zane Scott thing I think I've ever heard. That is,
finishing algebra class too, so it's really driving me mad.
Zane, if you guys didn't know, he's a military man. He's a U.S. Marine, and U.S. Marine, still going to school, living in the South now. So that's where some of the confusion sometimes comes, because time zones are hard. But now I think we're looking to get a couple guys in here for some interviews here, as we're 51 minutes left in happy hour for the second to last practice day for the fake 500, and these guys are really starting to get after it. The Jim Beaver guys are getting involved. I believe that was, who was that? Somebody just got into the fence really
John
hard.
Harper.
Yeah,
John Harper.
Let's go on board with John, as this car just stepped out middle of the corner. Oh boy, tried to go on the top side, got loose and overcorrects, and that's all she wrote. So that just shows how quick it can happen in Indianapolis. A slight overcorrection. And did I hear you correctly? In Landon got himself a new wheel just for this race?
A couple weeks ago, there was a tweet that he retweeted that mentioned a brand new steering wheel that is an open wheel type of steering wheel. And the way I mean this is, in today's open wheel racing, there are two different types of steering wheels, essentially, where you have the stock car style rim, which is the full way around, and you have that essentially for like a stock car. But for a majority of the open wheel cars these days, and specifically the modern Indy cars, it goes towards those smaller wheels with the digital dash, with the ability to quickly turn it around. Now, keep in mind, there's the old rims on the real world Lotus 79s, but there's the advantage and disadvantages to having that type of rim, Billy. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I've thought about buying a Formula style rim for a while now. For my setup, as we're seeing a big old pit party getting ready to go out onto the racetrack. But I see advantages, definitely. I know for a fact there's even a couple guys that are more comfortable with the Formula style rim, even on the dirt cars. I know of one pro in particular that he runs a Formula rim on a dirt car. It's just really about a comfort thing and an immersion. My brother on his rig down in Texas, he's got himself a couple of different steering wheels. He's got one for oval NASCAR, he's got one for dirt, he's got one for Formula style cars such as this, and it does make a big difference, and we've seen it already this week with some guys having some equipment failures, and you got to make sure that you're. It sounds weird, but maintenance on your sim equipment is just as important as it is on a real car. Not necessarily the matter between life and death, but it's one stuck pedal can take you out of a race that you've worked 2 weeks for. So you really do have to pay attention to everything on your sim rig. Make sure everything's good. Make sure you're comfortable. That's another big piece that I think a lot of people overlook is, there's a few different styles of are you going to be running on a single monitor, triple monitors, an ultra wide, or are you going to have VR? So if you're sitting in VR, you're going to be in VR for 2 to 2.5 to 3 hours on Saturday. You got to make sure all of your stuff's up to snuff and make sure that everything is good to go. And once you know it's working, with the way computers are, don't touch it. As long as it works, leave it alone and make sure it's good. I know James Tiernan, he was struggling with pedals the other day, so he had to take those apart and get them cleaned. So it is kind of one of those unthought of things when you first get into sim racing, that you're actually going to have to, maintain your equipment and make sure everything's working properly. But in a race like this, if you can get yourself a wheel that's more comfortable to use, absolutely, more power to you, because I know a few of us on the team are also testing for the Daytona 24-hour race that's coming up here in 2 to 3 weeks. Running a full couple of fuel runs in an LMP2 car, it's a workout. Your hands get clammy, and you got to make sure your equipment's up to stuff and make sure that you're comfortable when you're doing it.
100%, and keep in mind saying VR versus non-VR, there are the positives and negatives to that as well. You mentioned not just staying in the rig for 2.5 to 3 hours at the most. We're talking about if anything goes wrong with VR, you lose the said VR.
Yeah, we've seen that actually in. I've known guys in league races that have been going, and all of a sudden you just hear my VR went black, and or having a triple screen monitor go out. It changes everything completely. Myself, I race on triples because it's, to me right now, it's the most secure thing I can do. But I know VR, for the immersion, for the feel, a lot of guys absolutely swear by it. But to run a long race like this in VR is extremely tough. Kevin Click, I know last year, won the race in VR. And I know a lot of guys do it. Dan Zagers is one that I know he runs VR. Dallas Breeze, who we've got on screen, I know he runs on triple monitors. It is a whole entire different world in VR as it is over single screen. You're able to see a lot more, especially in traffic. Being able to actually physically just look over your left shoulder and see who's underneath of you, that's a very big, important piece to everything that you do on sim racing. So you really have to kind of, pick and choose. And it wouldn't shock me either to see guys that normally run in VR for this race, or even some of your longer NASCAR NIS races, run triple screens instead of VR, or even single screen, just for the sheer fact of eye strain. I know, me personally, when I look through VR, I can get about a 30-lap sprint car race in, and my eyes are screaming. I know a lot of the NASCAR guys. Is there a lot of, you would know more than me, is there really anybody on the Coke series that runs in VR?
I think there's one or two, but don't quote me on that. One or two at the very most. Most prefer the triples because of some of the risks, including, say you have a certain VR headset that has, say, a plastic cover. That plastic cover pops up a touch, light comes in, it automatically shuts off the screen. Do you want that to happen when you're going 3 wide for the race lead at Talladega? No. So there's that thought process there, but there's also the thoughts of making sure you're able to see the depth and sight lines properly is the way, at least for me, I personally use VR. The reason I use VR is because it allows me to see where the car's at more than triple monitors, where you basically have to depend on a button if you want to look around.
Yeah, it's really the few times that I've used VR, it's all been on the dirt side of things, and I mean it's absolutely incredible from an immersion standpoint. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to use VR on a motion rig before, which was VR actually with butt kickers on it, and by the time that it had a motion rig, the butt kicker systems on it, and VR, it really feels like you're, in my case, it was a sprint car, and it felt like you were in a sprint car. So that immersion factor is absolutely, it's incredible. If you've not had the chance to run iRacing on VR, highly, highly recommend doing it, if for no other reason than just to try it out. And with the way that VR systems are going now, some of them are absolutely incredible. I've got a buddy of mine, actually Jeremy Zarfos, in the field. He's got one of the new G2 headsets, and he said it is night and day over Rift. So the advancements in technology are going to make this even more immersive. It's going to become more reliable. We're still really in like I would still say the first generation of VR headsets, so it's definitely a big change. I would say probably, though, the majority of the people that are in this race are going to be running on triple screens or a single monitor. I got triples right before the pro season a couple of years ago when I ran the World of Outlaw Pro Series, and it was for me a total game changer. It was a lot more immersive. It was a lot more comfortable. It was a lot easier to race people. But VR is just that added step. And that added piece of immersion that a lot of guys look for, especially some of the real racers. They really prefer VR because it makes them feel like they're more in the cockpit of the race car or in the seat of a NASCAR Cup car. So it just gives them that little bit better feel for what the car is doing.
41 minutes to go, approaching that mark in practice. And of note, Landon Castle is now up to 4th on the board. Moments ago with a 46.749. That's after he got bump draft. But the car you've seen behind him, Shane Kenko, is trying to bump draft. And here's one of the risks of that this week, Billy. Is we mentioned this before with the wings. If you clip a bit of the curbing too hard, how about trying to bump draft in these cars? That's something you don't usually see.
Yeah, definitely not, as Landon goes for a little bit of a spin. We had a few guys last year, I believe Billy Brickley was one that opening practice last year, but it was kind of like, figuring out the limitations of this car. Bump drafting is something extremely, extremely dangerous in this car because it is able, we've seen cones destroy nose wings on these cars, completely ruin the aero balance and your top end speed. So you really have to be careful of, if you do get into the back of somebody, bump drafting if you get too close, of making sure that you can not damage the race car. As you see Jeffrey or Dallas Breeze get a little bit tight there. It's I think Billy Brickley was one last year that said it is not worth it to bump draft. They didn't find much extra speed, and the speed that you gained was not worth the sketchiness. As it looks like we're getting ready to have a massive old pit party.
Ready for this, because I'm organizing it.
This is going to be
You
everybody.
You already know what's coming.
Oh, are we getting a 3-wide practice start here? It's what we like to see.
That's exactly what Zane's got us amidst the doing. We mentioned he's a part of race control, so fasten your seatbelts. This is a preview of how the start can be as we look at some of the speed cams. This is going to be where everyone's going to sort each other out for where it's going to be realistic towards what will happen come Saturday night. And the action for the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500. And 3-wide starts are pretty tricky, mind you, Billy, to do in real life, let alone in the sim, because especially the space, it's nerve-wracking when you're going 3-wide at a moment.
Absolutely. Last year we gave out very, very, not necessarily instructions, but gosh, what a cool sight. We saw last year everybody get through turn 1, and if anybody's watched the Indy 500 in the past, it's not like a NASCAR start. It isn't at all. It's a very separated, open, not nose to tail. We see a couple guys being fairly close nose to tail. But you want to make sure that you have enough room to get down into turn number 1. We saw this kind of thing last year in the last couple of practice sessions, working with guys to try to figure out what they needed to be, the spacing they needed to be, and they're green off of 4. But, it's just, it's a totally different atmosphere. 3-wide starts in iRacing is something not a lot of people get to see. I would say everybody's done a pretty good job so far, though.
I think some of them only went 2-wide, though. How about 3-wide for the front of the group? DeMerchant, Stewart, and Blackford are among those drivers who have done that. They have already pulled away with Ryan Broderick, also in the grouping, and Chris Springer from the rest of the pack, as everyone else had a bit more of a bunched-up start. Here comes the move from Seth DeMerchant to make it 3-wide in this grouping, and these are the aggressive moves we may see early on when the tires are their freshest come race days.
Yeah, and again, this is actually a really good way to start that, or a really good way to practice that. You notice everybody's pretty much single file now, except for the front couple cars. DeMerchant all over the rear wing of Jeffrey Stewart getting into turn number 1.
Can you just go to fast cam real quick? I just want to see it. Just go fast cam.
We can do that. Oh, we got a big old wreck in the back.
And they're wrecking everywhere. Chris Springer, John Harper, the only person to get through. Everybody else just crashed. Literally everybody else just crashed except for one car.
And this is exactly why. We do what we do in these practice sessions. It's extremely important. It's extremely important for these guys to get this seat time and understanding of how all this works. Get it all out of the system now. Learn what you need to learn. And again, like I said, last year, and it looks like we're getting ready to organize another one here. Last year, we did this 3 or 4 times to kind of get everybody used to it, to figure out how far you needed to be away from each other. If you go back and watch the previous Fake 500 from earlier this May, you really did see guys spread out. It's not a very close start. It's not supposed to be. It's a get in line, get yourselves where you need to be. So it's all a learning process for a lot of these guys that haven't done it before. And I'm sure some of the veterans, Skylar Brown and Brian Blackford, Landon Castle, and even Zane as well, being over the radio with each other, explaining where to go, what to do, how to do it, and and to get through turns 1 and 2 in a very safe and orderly manner. The moves that you're seeing here, we're not going to see them on race day. There's no fast repairs on race day. So you really have to be careful. Really have to be careful of how you start these races off.
We're going to try it again, shall we? And we'll see how much bunched up they go here. 3 wide. It's Stuart, Brian Broderick, Bobby Rafferty, who will lead the group this time to try things on out here. Keep in mind that just about everybody in this session is, again, taking part in this except for Chris Peterson, Shane Keiko. And we're talking at least 8 rows deep of cars here that are going to have to figure this out and plan for this out.
Yeah, and that's the most important. That's the most important thing. You see Jim Beaver now, or part of the Jim Beaver Esports organization, with Bobby Rafferty up on the pole now, is he's going to be bringing the field to green for the Patriot 100. Not a 3-wide start for that race, but still knowing how the start's going to be, picking up the throttle, making sure you don't get any tire spin, because these guys haven't really done that a lot. Tomorrow we're not going to be broadcasting, but we're going to see more of the same thing. We've seen it a little bit earlier today too, where guys are practicing coming in for green flag pit stops. That's a very, very important piece. Getting in and off a pit road here can be dangerous and very, very sketchy, to say the least.
Let's take a listen to the Catch Fence Apparel Speed Cam as they make their way around the racetrack for their second practice start. Love the camera shake with the speed, showing how quick these cars are making their way around the racetrack. Broderick, Stewart, among your top drivers. Some beautiful sounds for these cars with 32 minutes to go in practice and a much cleaner launch. 2x2, several rows deep. As these drivers sort themselves out and practice things, we've talked a lot about this name, Adam Blocker. One of the big names in today's race, a 1-time Lionheart Retro Series champion, a 3-time Lionheart IndyCar Series champion. He now joins us here in the broadcast booth. Adam, do you have a copy?
Yep, I got you.
Adam, first things first, a big week for you in this event. What brought you in to the 2021 running of the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500?
I just saw, a lot of big names are in the event last year, and yeah, just kind of had a little point in the schedule where I could kind of work on the setup for this, and it's Indy, so I always like racing Indy, and I know these cars are pretty fun to race, so yeah, just kind of interested in it from that. So
how has it been trying to set up a car for this type of event and to plan things around for you and the Power Slide guys?
Well, honestly, I've pretty much been doing it by myself because we're not really focused on this as a team. It's just been me kind of solo in it. For qualifying, it honestly wasn't too bad because a lot of the setup philosophies that we use in the IndyCar for official Indy 500s and everything transferred over, so I could put together something that was competitive enough, pretty quickly. So I'm happy to start 14th. I mean, qualifying doesn't really matter that much here, as you saw, I guess, in last year's race with Kevin Click winning from last. So. But the race setup right now is pretty tricky because this car's balance changes so much as the fuel burns off because the fuel tank's not very centered. So it gets so much freer as the fuel burns off that, you're inevitably going to have to make compromises on late run stability, but also, like early in the run on heavy fuel and deep in traffic, there's a lot of understeer. So yeah, just trying to find the balance in that right now.
Indeed. And what are some of the nerves, if you have some nerves, for this type of event, to know that There's a lot of prestige in its history so far, and a lot of big names amongst yourself in this field.
Not really too nervous about it. I mean, I think for me, yeah, I guess, I'm not really have a lot at stake, I guess. Like, it's just trying to go out there and have fun and really just, I think I can, have a solid race, and then it's just a classic thing with Indy where you just got to be in position at the end. If you're in the top 5 or so, you have a chance, but yeah, you really just have to make it there. So.
As well, a lot of the drivers have spoken about the tradition of Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the real-world Indianapolis 500-mile race. Many drivers have either been a part of festivities here, raced at this track, spotted at this track, been to this venue. What's kind of your connections and traditions when it comes to the Brickyard in your career?
Well, I went to the Indy 500 first time a couple years ago, or 2018. I went also, back again in 2019. Now I'm actually an engineer in IndyCar, so my first Indy 500 last year, so that was pretty cool. Even though it was kind of weird with nobody in the stands, but yeah, that was pretty awesome. And then obviously, like, I've focused in the IndyCar on iRacing for the last 3 or 4 years, so I've done a lot of Indy 500s, and it's always the races that we want to win, and all the broadcast 500s. I've had a lot of seconds, not many wins though.
Talk us through working as an engineer in IndyCar, as you just mentioned, especially with IndyCar doing a lot of virtual races on top of that too, and you're one of the names that popped up a lot in some of those preparations for those races.
Yeah, I mean, our team, PowerSlide, definitely helped some of the professional drivers during that that time, which was really cool. But yeah, in real life, I'm sort of work on the powertrain side of things, so it's kind of a little bit different. Different. It's obviously still dealing with the car setup and everything, but it's kind of a different perspective. It's not all the vehicle dynamics stuff that we focus in on iRacing. It's all the powertrain stuff, which fortunately / unfortunately, from my perspective, it would be cool if we had all that in iRacing, but I don't think anybody else would really want to deal with it. So yeah, but
I can say as an IndyCar nerd, I would love that. The more intricate they can make these, the better, I think, personally. But I'm a nerd, so
I think it'd be pretty cool. But you just have to add so much detail, and it's not like, I don't know.
Well, and I got my first look 2 years ago now, or 2 Indy 500s ago. I spotted on Fast Friday for Shank Racing, and it was. For many, many years, I dreamed about being able to go into the pit area or the garage area at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway during the month of May, and seeing how the powertrain and the drivetrain groupings work, with the gearboxes being probably, just as important as Aero at Indianapolis. To see everybody at work doing that sort of thing was absolutely mind-blowing to me. The work that you guys do is absolutely impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Indy qualifying especially, and Indy race, that's probably the most important race for the engine guys, because 0.1% horsepower makes a huge difference in qualifying. So yeah, it's ridiculous the amount of preparation that our whole, everybody in, Honda and Chevy both put into it. And, yeah, it's just the margins are so fine. It's pretty crazy.
Of course, we've seen a lot of preparation for you for this type of event. How overall, you mentioned the fun part, do you plan to approach the race itself, strategy-wise, right down to everything? How do you look to try and plan things about for race day come Saturday night?
I think I have a good idea about how the strategy is going to play out in this car, just from all the races I did a few years ago in the Retro Series, Lionheart Retro Series. I think that's kind of a good benefit. I kind of already know how the strategy is going to work. One difference here is that the fuel tank's a lot larger than what they ran that series, so that's a good bit different. But yeah, I think the main thing I just need to focus on is getting the car comfortable in all phases of the run, and I think if I do that, then yeah, and the other thing is I think avoiding incidents is going to be tricky. I expect everyone to race pretty cleanly and on race day, but The thing is, like, we're all going to be racing so close, and it's kind of hard to see 4 or 5 cars in front sometimes if you're really close to the car in front. So, because the wings on these cars are so big in the back that, like, if someone spins, it's hard to see them, and just like 5-6 cars can just pile in, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault. So.
A couple things I want to ask you about here as well is kind of as we look at some of these cars work their way in some of these drafting packs, some of them for whatever reason try bump drafting and demolishing the front wings, but others curling the midst of seeing how the cars are running. How do these cars feel when you're in the cockpit itself, in the pack, and feeling the adrenaline race around you in these types of cars, in these tests?
I mean, honestly, it races pretty similar to a slow version of the modern IndyCar in a way. Like, if you're 3rd, 4th, 5th car back in line, it's really tough because the dirty air is so bad. Especially as this practice temperature as this practice has gone on, the track temperature went up significantly, which will happen in the race. And then 3rd, 4th, 5th car back in line, you're actually really struggling just to get runs at all. But if you're in the top, if you're 2nd car in line, it's pretty easy to get a run on the 1st place guy and swap with him or whatever. So I don't know. That's kind of the racing I expect is fairly strung out behind, but then swapping up front, and then you definitely can make passes in the pack. You just have to be opportunistic. And the really nice thing is I think you can actually pass on the inside or the outside in most of the corners. So it just depends on the situation, where cars are around you, and who has momentum and all that stuff. So.
Anything else you'd like to note before we let you get back to preparation for this weekend?
I just want to thank all the admins for putting it on. It's been a pretty cool event so far, and just looking forward to the race.
Thank you very much for your time, Adam.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Adam Blocker, taking time to speak to us, one of the Power Slide machines, entered into this event, or rather the Power Slide event. Of course, a lot of virtual sim racing experience, and of course, a good way for people to learn about the real world side for him as well, because I don't think many people realize that real world engineering experience that he has in him working with Emular specifically for 2020.
Yeah, I definitely did not. I was, I not really shocked by much anymore, but pretty cool to see that, but again, it goes back to what we were talking about early on in the broadcast. The diversity of this field. We've got NASCAR drivers. NASCAR pros on iRacing. We've got IndyCar spotters. We've got all this different variety of people. We've got gearbox guys and drivetrain guys from IndyCar. But it goes to show Adam's been fast. All these last 2 weeks. And it's really shown his experience in the real world, as well as on the sim is carrying over from the IR18, the actual IndyCar, over to the Lotus 79. So pretty cool to see that transition.
More rather is the pronunciation part of me on that, but either way, it's great to see that. And the reason I mentioned the big new part of that is seeing him, Connor Harrington, several others all working with the real world IndyCar drivers as part of the preparation for those events, so everyone can catch up on how the cars feel, as well as to help diagnose what setup they wanted to have for those races when they were on NBCSN during the springtime. So it's huge to see a lot of those drivers get that recognition, as we're under almost 21 minutes on the board. Zane, your thoughts on the experience levels, as that adds another driver with experience here at Indy, whether virtually or in real life?
I think it definitely helps. The more experience you have in real life or not, I mean, that's an added benefit, because we see a lot of times IndyCar guys will use iRacing to get ready for a racetrack, or they'll use it to kind of figure out where their braking points want to be, and then we've seen guys go from the sim to real life and do good as well. So I mean, any experience you have is helpful. I mean, just knowing, hey, if there's 3 guys going to turn 1, which one is ideally in the best position to lift? You're only going to learn that either by racing on it or watching a copious amounts of Indy 500s like I have. So I mean, it's He's definitely going to help. It'll be interesting to see how Adam does in the race. He's going to start kind of, I think, about midfield in this whole deal. So be interesting to see how it plays out for him, and then for some of the other guys as well that have that real life experience.
20 minutes to go. Once more, final 20 minutes for Redline Race Designs practice day. Once again, I'd like to remind you that Redline Race Designs features designs with Dave Ward and Colton West. Be able to find them on Facebook at Redline Race Designs tonight. As we close into the final stages of the second last practice overall before the main events for this week, Billy, in your opinion, who has impressed you the most throughout this past week plus, leading into everything?
Well, a few people kind of come to mind. Chris Springer is one, as he's coming out on off of pit road as well. Chris Springer is one I think that's been very impressive. I know he kind of, in the broadcast over the weekend, thanked the pill draw gods for getting him a good pill draw on pole day, but he's shown the speed all week to be a contender in the race. I really feel like if anybody in the field can win the thing, but Chris Springer's one I think to watch for on race day. But truthfully, I think, and it's not a shock to me, they were pretty quick last year, but the group, the Sofa King Simsport group, really stepped their game up this year, and really bringing a good package, getting all four of their drivers into the field and solidly into the field. Three of them on the first day, and then Billy Bowerman putting it in on bump day, solidly on bump day. So those four drivers, I think, really are a big group to watch, and especially with two of them coming from the front row. So I know Billy Bowerman. He's a dirt guy through and through, but I know he looks forward to this race. Enjoys it, enjoys Indy, short tracker like us, that really enjoys the Indy experience. So pretty cool to see those, but I would say those are my, not necessarily my shockers or anything for the week, but I think some of the top performers, and I know we, going into this, we expected Brian Blackford to be fast. We expected Landon to be fast. I would say Landon would probably be the biggest shock to me, starting that far back with the amount of speed that we know he has, with working with Brian Blackford and Seth the Merchant. So those are the guys that I really see as the ones really to watch on race day.
You mentioned one of the shocks, London Castle. Who else has shocked you so far?
I think it's more so, well, not really a shock. Again, the Indy Racing Images team, they've done an extremely good job as well. I think the shock, really, for me, Shane Keiko, I think rolling off outside of row number 3. He laid down 4 magnificent laps early on, or on pole day, that really did a fantastic job. I'm not overly surprised. He showed good speed last year, but the pickup from last year to this year is pretty astounding. So did a lot of homework, and it shows on the racetrack. That whole group has done an extremely good job. But I would say really he's been the top performer for me for the week, as far as outright pace. But the other guy, we're watching him on screen right now, Jeffrey Stewart. He, like we said earlier, wasn't even planning on running the Wicked Energy Gun Fake 500. Was a very late entry, ran 5th in the race last year, and then made it extremely exciting on bump day. Showed a lot of speed, and was one of the first ones to go out in the open qualifying session and really just lay down a lap and put himself into the field. So he's another one that I'm not really shocked or surprised that he made the field, but to show the outright pace that he did with not a lot of practice, that's a pretty tall feat that he did.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely here. It's been incredible to see some of these performances here. And I'm curious to see who really picks up the pace too at the same time in the next couple days or so, or who has been working overnight or in the early mornings and early afternoons, before the practice sessions for extra data on top of this, because here's the thing. We're seeing some of the highest lap totals of the week coming in tonight. How about 151 laps from Brian Blackford tonight alone? That is a lot of laps turned around this circuit in one night. Second spot for that is Chris Springer with 131.
Yeah, Blackford almost putting in an entire race distance this evening. That, to me, is, Brian's one of those guys that he loves the special events, and he takes them pretty seriously, and he's put on some of his own. I believe it was the Hard to Drive 300, using the old COT car at Atlanta that, it extremely cool to see a guy put that much work into this race. It just goes to show how much he really wants to win this race and have a good showing. So to me, that's just absolutely awesome to see these guys putting in almost full race distances in 3 hours of practice. And I'm sure we're going to see Brian back tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to see Brian back tomorrow for more practice to just kind of fine-tune those cars, get them maybe a little bit more stable, and running in traffic. So it's going to be a wild rest of the week, but I'm really looking forward to finally getting to race day on Thursday. It's the culmination of 2 weeks is finally coming to a head, so that's an awesome feeling.
One note, there is a change for 6 on the board with the grouping of cars you see here. Ryan Broderick just put in a 46.795 a few laps ago, so he's picking up the pace in the late stages. I'm curious who else tries to go that route to the Brodericks, to have the brothers race against one another, Billy. It's going to be big to see the family members, to see how they race against one another.
Yeah, I know, Mark is kind of... Mark is, we'll call him the clowned prince of the dirt world. He's a lot of fun in servers and heck of a racer, but I know he takes this race really serious because of what Indy does mean. I mean, he grows up in central Pennsylvania, and not a close to Indy type deal, but is a big fan of all things racing, and but that brother dynamic, it'll be pretty cool. We didn't get to see that last year. They both qualified or made an attempt to qualify in, and were separated out. Ryan made the race, Mark did not. So it'll be cool to see the brother dynamic. Do they work together most of the day and try to draft each other and get up closer towards the front of the field, as they're both going to be starting from the back row. So it's going to be it's going to be fun to watch as those two work their way up through the field on Saturday.
Here's one thing to also think about for both Thursday and Saturday is we haven't talked too much about this point yet. How many people do you feel are going to need to practice that pit entry to be able to make sure they're ready for that, regardless of the organization? Because we haven't seen too many drivers go in for pit stops during a green flag run here.
Yeah, and that's something I think we're going to probably see a lot of tomorrow. I did notice DeMerchant and Blackford working on that a little bit. It's that I think is one of the most crucial points. We were talking a little bit about our preparation for the Daytona 24 Hours. That's another thing that I've started to work on myself is coming onto pit road, making sure, because you're sitting in the car, you're in this case you're sitting in your cockpit or your desk chair or whatever you're racing on. You're sitting in there and running a 45 to 50 lap stint. Your brain kind of almost conditions itself to slow everything down, but then once you come on pit road, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm way too quick, and if you lock the brakes up, you can spin the car out. So coming onto pit road is extremely important. I do hope, as we see Ryan Broderick actually duck in for a little practice attempt to get into pit road and get into his pit box, that's going to be a very important piece. And a lot of these short trackers, like a Stephen Hill, a James Tiernan, they don't run a lot of these big races on paved ovals. Pit stops aren't a thing in a sprint car race or a midget race or whatever it may be. So coming into pit road in a dirt race usually means you're probably crashed out to begin with. In this case, you're going to have to come down pit road at least 3 times, maybe 4 to 5. So depending on how the yellows go, and like Zane was saying earlier, with the way that the race is going to shake out, as far as cautions go, single car spins, as long as the track is cleared, we're not going to see the yellow flag like we would have last year for a lot of those single car spins. So guys are going to have to really pay attention to how they enter pit road, and to do it in a safe manner, but also a quick manner to get themselves in and out of pit road fast. Because if it's a green flag pit stop, if we get to green flag stops, that'll make or break your race. If you come into pit road too slow, you could lose so much time on the racetrack. So you really have to be patient coming onto pit road, but you also still have to be aggressive to get in there as quick as possible.
Absolutely. 9 minutes to go in the session. Now, by the way, of note, Seth the Merchant just crashed from his pack with Landon Castle. This pack you're following along with still sees Chris Bremer as the lead car, Kyle May, Stephen Hill. We haven't mentioned too much him tonight. Also in this group as a big wiggle for Kyle May. And I've been starting to notice this a lot, is drivers are starting to develop some wing damage even from some of these bumps that is starting to really hurt their cars too. That could be big to be able to experience right now, to make sure they have that experience now too in these closing stages possibly.
Well, and that's actually a pretty solid point, I know in some of the races that I've done in the past, the Bathurst 12 hours, it's very important to keep your car clean. It's very important. But there's going to be some cases where you might clip a guy and bend a nose wing. So to have that experience of knowing that your nose wing is damaged in this practice session, but still turning those laps to know, okay, the left side of the nose wing is damaged, this is what it's going to do to the car. And knowing that going into it may keep you back out onto the racetrack. So that's going to be one of the more important things too, where you never hope that your car gets damaged, but you always have to play it like it could, and to keep yourself into the race. Absolutely. As one more little grouping I think is getting ready to go, there's only a few more cars left on track. Tyson Landis, Jeffrey Stewart, along with Billy Bowerman. Then you have Castle, Broderick, Blackford, DeMerchant, who have all been working together here for this last group. Want to touch upon Tyson Landis a little bit, because we haven't talked about his name too much. 23rd at the moment. How much do you feel he needs to try and improve for the main races coming up? Well, Tyson's kind of a wild card. He had the speed last year to do really, really well. Just had some technical difficulties, like we were talking about earlier, which took him out of the running of the race. But Tyson's got really good race speed, I think. He's ran in some packs today, but I just don't think he's been out of a pack long enough to get one of those big monster runs to move himself up the time charts. Tyson, at least I know on the dirt side, is he's a very feel guy. If he feels good, he knows he's going to be fast. If the car feels right, that's all he's looking for. And he might be going for stability over just outright race pace. But as you see here, he's running with Blackford and DeMerchant and Landon Castle as well, sticking right with him. So he has that pace to stay with them, but does he have the pace to pass them? That's going to be the question.
Absolutely. As you see right now, trying to work with Landon Castle as the caboose here for the final 6 minutes or so. And it's been interesting to watch these cars. They've been running nose to tail, these cars in this pack, just about getting as close as they can. And I think I understand why, is not just for the fact that Seth DeMerchant just damaged his front nose by bump drafting the back end of Blackford's car, is dirty air practice. We talked about it. This could be critical for the long run.
Oh, absolutely. I firmly believe that we're going to get a lot more green flag long runs than what we did last year, or the previous running of the Fake 500. That these runs here are some of the most important and crucial laps that you can do running in the draft. And if you're a Tyson Landis, The great thing is you're drafting with the 3 fastest cars right now on the racetrack. Seth the Merchant, Brian Blackford, and Landon Castle. Those are your top 3. So Tyson has to be feeling pretty sporty right now, knowing that he's got the speed to run with them, as we just saw Tyson Landis now go 14th on the board. So he did get one of those big runs, and got loose, and upside down goes Tyson Landis. But again, as long as you learn something there, that's what's important. If you learn something there of, okay, in dirty air, this is exactly what my car did. I need to make it a little bit more stuck in the rear. That's a good thing. So that's what these practice sessions are exactly for.
Indeed, and final 5 minutes to go in happy hour for Redline Race Designs practice day. Want to see if we can take a listen in on one of the roof cans, sponsored by Roofco, and take a quick listen on some of these speeds. Again, the track is cooling down 109 degrees for these closing stages as they continue to now trade times. Chris Springer to 5th.
Yeah, oh boy, and we saw that monster run right here. This should be another good lap for Chris Springer as he gets a really long catapult down the back straightaway. So, and again, we talked about, Chris Springer is one of those guys that I feel I feel like he's not on a lot of guys' radars, but he's one of the faster guys in this field. So the Geneseo, Illinois driver really putting in the work here late in the race, or late in the practice session, to put himself up towards the top of the board, which has to make you feel good.
It has to with the 46.728 with the draft there. That bumps Dallas Breeze out of the top 5 as here's Landon Castle. And I almost feel like this is a target that the Merchant, Blackford, and Castle were just trying to set there with how close they were for so long. Is they wanted to prove a statement almost that they had rocket ships. To put this lightly, Blackford actually gave credit to the Merchant for the rocket ship on Twitter after the halfway point in practice. On Twitter.
Yeah, and that's if you're the Sofa King team or anybody else in this field, as we see a bump draft out of Landon down the front straightaway to get into the corner, but then breathing the throttle to get off of him, so you got the air over your nose wing. You know, that's Blackford came to make a statement, and he definitely did. Is Landon a little bit loose? But we'll go on board with Blackford as he's waving to the crowd. We'll call it a little bit. He's got to be feeling pretty darn good though, going into the end of practice here.
Yep.
For Redline Race Designs practice day, he's got to be feeling good about that race car. And he said over the weekend, he goes, "It's time to go to work now." So he's definitely going to work. He's done his homework, and he's going to make these cars as fast as humanly possible.
Anything else you feel you'd like to add, or anything else that should be noted, of course, in these final couple minutes as we are closing in on the final bell?
Just ready for race day. I think we've seen today with these speeds, 46.504. Is a little bit of bump drafting gone too far. Bringing up these practice times here, 3/10 is a lot, but in race trim, we've seen Brian Blackford and Seth the Merchant not be able to break away. They might be trying the strategy of let's build a sketchy race car to try to run away and hide from this thing, and that might not be the case. Your lap time is very indicative of where you're at in the draft. So the practice speeds, while important, not telling the whole story. But I think if you can leave your car here top 10, top 20 in times, you got to feel pretty good about whatever race you're in later on this week. And as we're in the final minute now, just ready for race day. Cannot wait for the Crescent Donut Patriot 100 and the night before the 500 on Friday, and then ultimately the big show on Saturday. That's somebody's going to be drinking them some milk and living some Indy glory, so we're looking forward to it.
To recap your board, as the rest of the drivers are now pulling off the racetrack for the final 30 seconds, Seth the Merchant, your quickest driver tonight, with a 46.504 in total time. He ended up putting in 142 laps. That is less than the 163 from Brian Blackford with a 46.520. Then Landon Castle rounds out the top 3 for that group of friends with a 46.6. Then Skylar Brown, Chris Springer, top 5. Dallas Breeze finished off the session in 6th, while Ryan Broderick finished in 7th. Mike Rasmus from Nexus Esports in 8th. Tyler Kendall, early time was quick, and he stayed inside the top 10 the whole session, 46.817. Adam Blocker rounded out the top 10, the real-world engineer in IndyCar, as well as iRacing IndyCar favorite for several different series. So, as the last cars complete their times, it's been a competitive session, and it's been a very, very knowledgeable session, to say the very least, here at Indianapolis. Billy, your quick final thoughts.
I think we're going to see a magical weekend here. A lot of racing going on. Everybody's doing an incredible job. I think there's really not any big surprises throughout. I am kind of surprised, I guess, really to see Keith Jeffrey as far down on the list as he is. But the Jim Beaver Esports team, they're going to be doing their best to put themselves up front. They start around mid-pack. Chase Rowdeman came in, ran a few laps, feels pretty comfortable. He put his car away in the box, so he's sitting in the 13th position. So it's going to be a wild few days, and just ready to get everything started. Starting off Thursday night with the Crescent Donut Patriot 100.
Zane, your thoughts?
It's been a busy 2 weeks, to say the least, but we're going to be back. We'll have some more coverage here from the Fake 500, but all in all, we've seen it all. We've seen great practice speeds, and then we've seen the heartbreak of Indy on bump day and really pole day. So drama-filled first week, and we're not even racing yet. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But the next time we're going to get to talk here and broadcast anything from the virtual Indianapolis race at Motor Speedway is going to be Thursday, and we'll be taking the green flag on the first 40 laps of 240 laps that we have on schedule here for the Fake 500. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but it's going to be a fun ride, that's for sure.
I'd like to thank you for tuning in once more for tonight's coverage here on Elbows Up TV of Redline Race Designs Practice Day. For more information on Redline Race Designs, find them on Facebook at Redline Race Designs. But it's time to say goodbye. For my broadcast partners tonight, in Zane Scott and Billy Rowley, I'm Justin Prince saying so long. We'll see you Thursday night for the Crescent Donut Patriot 100. You've been watching Redline Race Designs Practice Day, and what is another chapter written for a story.
Would you believe me if I told you an old story? One where the beginning is more than 100 years old. One that's featured every big name to exist in auto racing. Would you believe me if I said nothing grows old here? Where thousands and thousands come to be awed and inspired by speed? One where dreams are born, then just as quickly destroyed? Would you believe me if I said it was more than just a race? One that requires so much sacrifice for just a chance at glory? One where their faces are etched into history to never be forgotten? Would you believe me if I said this version of the story was different? A version where the cars are virtual, but the racing and competition are real. A story that brings grown men and women to tears, then just a page later to a smile from ear to ear. A story so fast it's tough to keep up with. One with danger and thrill around each and every corner. a story about heartbreak, and a story about perseverance. It's a story about redemption, and a story about triumph.
Well, this is the closest thing, boys, to living a dream. Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is the story of the Wicked Energy Gum Fake 500.